Just put it that way.
Oh my gosh.
Alright, so this is
Oh
a
my
thing where
god.
I think we should probably be a bit serious now because we're currently streaming, guys.
What does that mean?
Serious? It's that little thing where you don't make jokes all the time and you don't sound silly. I think you may have
That
heard of
doesn't
it.
sound fun.
No, it's not, but... Oh wait,
I
I
don't I
forgot.
don't want to do that.
God damn it, I forgot to close my Facebook. Great. Okay, so... Wait, no, that music is too loud. Okay, so for those that are here, welcome ladies and gentlemen. This is the second part of the Thracia podcast that we had going on a month ago actually. So yeah, we're just gonna have unfinished business now. So yeah, who wants to present ourselves? Like, who are the people here to talk about Thracia 776? Um, someone
Hi.
wants.
Hi, hi,
Just
Chloe.
present yourselves, guys. Just like I. Okay, this is awkward.
Welcome to the Thracia 776 podcast part 2. I am the crazy guy who started this whole shenanigans. My name's Grant Boothe. These other fine people, why don't you introduce yourselves?
Okay, so I'll start. My name is Olikad. As you may have not remembered, I've pretty much completed Thracia in its entirety just for this stream, and yeah, I don't think I have much else to say now. So yeah, what about you, John?
What about me? My name is John Barkmeyer. Hi, good to see you all guys again. You've heard my backstory from the last one, so no need to do it that much. I love Thracia. We all love Thracia. Let's get into it. Guy.
Hi, I'm Guy. I'm the one that's really into this game.
No, really, I had no idea.
And he means into it in more ways than one.
Hey now.
God
my.
damn it.
Whoa. Whoa. Whoa.
Oh, that's right. Chloe's here. That might. Awkward.
Yeah, it might be. Alright, so
Why did I agree?
where were we last time actually? I am, we were talking about our favorite chapters. Or
Yeah, so last time, just to kind of give you all an overview of where we're headed today, last time we walked through a lot about the game mechanics and different map making sorts of points we wanted to discuss. So we've got a few maps we wanted to dust up today before we move on. I think the bulk of today's discussion is going to be about character and storyline and all the artistic parts of the game. So that's where we're at. We had walked through kind of our favorite chapters in the game last time. We talked about a few others we had wanted to mention. I think there were a few outstanding chapters that a few of us wanted to cover before we get moving. So I'll hand it over to, I think, and maybe each of us, Grant and Ollie for sure.
All right. I did want to talk about chapter 6 because it's arguably the greatest escape chapter in the series. So, chapter 6, this takes place right at the end of the master jail sequence. So, at this point, Leaf and Go have been captured, and then they're busting out. Abel's been turned to stone, and Marita is still evil. She's been cursed by the Darkness Blade, and then everybody is now trying to actually break out of prison with the Grand Bell Empire right on their heels. I'd always love this chapter because, on the one hand, you could try to beat it quickly via rescue ferrying and opening doors, or you could try and have a little bit of fun with it and try and rescue houses. If you manage to rescue the children in Chapter 4X, which, if you don't, they guilt trip you, but if you do, they give you really cool stuff. And I always love that little trade-off.
Yeah, it's true. I think chapter 6 is really good. I agree with you, it's probably one of the best escape maps in the whole series. Because, well, first off, what Artesia I really like is that, well, once again, the team University is playing. It's a team that really helps into conveying the whole feeling of panic the Leafs army is facing at the moment of this chapter, and it's working so well. And also just the way that you at the start you're just starting to sneaking, like you're just trying to stealth your way through the village, try to not get spotted in any way whatsoever, and meanwhile just try to get to the few houses are in the way when you're just getting out. You're just getting well past the soldiers, but then you have a point where you don't have really a choice but to face those soldiers, and then you really feel like suddenly the level of stress you're facing is much higher than before, and like just to see that complemented with the music works really well. Like I think the chapter's strongest point is that it really makes you feel like how would I say? It really makes you feel exactly what Leaf's army is feeling at the moment. And besides, it's just really fun to play because of how you really want to make the perfect compromise between making everyone escape alive and get as much stuff as you can. And believe me, you really want the stuff that the villagers gave you in. The villagers will give you in Chapter 4X if you rescue the children, because those are some really good items that you really want. So yeah, I think I've said enough. This chapter is really good, like all the way through.
I think that covers some of the points I really love about this map. What I enjoy, there's a great like bit of scene setting that you can do when you, and by you I mean the developers, when like you design a chapter that has a big set of enemies on it that are way too good for you, that immediately tells the player like you've got to work around this, you've got to find a way around them so you don't draw their attention, which is cool, but also adds this like good thematic element of just like how outclassed Leaf's soldiers really are. And if there's no other lesson of the end of the first act of Thracia, it's that Leaf has gotten himself way farther into things than he has any ability of getting out of. So that kind of set of units at the gate and the appearance of Galzus later on, that really hammers home how much in trouble Leaf really is at this point. And the other part I like about this map is it's, as with a number of Thracia maps, I think you can do with it what you want. If all you want to do is just get out of there as fast as you can and save your little prison escapee butts, then you can do that. You just kind of run through the gates, run through the town, and get out. But if you want more, you can stop at the houses and get some goodies for the kids you saved. And if you want even more, there are some shops around. If you've managed to sell a few things by now, you might be able to stop in there, switch your inventory around to a place you like. You might be able to buy something that you're really in need of. So there's a lot of ways you can waste time on this map such that the emergency grows and grows and grows, which is something I really love about it. It's like you can get as invested in it as you want, and there are reasons that push you to invest more in it.
Yeah,
cool map.
This is an excellent point, actually. I think this whole sense of urgency is really pushed at its max, man. Like if you spend a lot of time on this map, and you really shouldn't spend that much time, but I think the later terms on the map, none other than fucking Galzus will show up. And if you know Thracia, you know that Galzus is a motherfucker that is really strong. Like I think he has capped strength, skill, and speed, 5 movement stars, maybe less than that. But like he's just pretty much invincible. And if he shows up, you pretty much know that you're really fucked. Like you
The game tells you that because the near defeat music starts playing the turn before he shows up.
It does.
Then we the player just go, ah!
Yeah, pretty much. It's like when you see when you just see Galsus showing up, you know that you're
You're
panicking
dead.
even harder if that was possible. It's bonkers, really.
Oh, but see, Galsus showing up also offers another optional challenge for this map. You can try to take him on, and you can do it if you're smart about it.
Can? What?
Yes,
Whoa.
yes,
Do tell.
you can. See, what most people that think of it like to do is offer up one of the thieves as capture bait, which cuts his stats in half, and then
Right.
hope try to chip at him from afar and then send someone in for the kill. It's not easy because he is still very fast and very bulky, but if you can do it, you can get master weapons in chapter 6, which is really, really early.
Wow, just having master weapons this early in the game is fucking bonkers. Like,
And the thing is, like, Leaf could already almost use it because he started with a C rank. He's probably a B by now. So if you can get him to A rank quickly, he can use the Master Sword this early too.
well, he should be able since he pretty much uses Ice Brain all the time in the Master Escape arc, so I can see that happening.
Hashtag
So-
get wrecked game.
Quite so. Undone by the game system.
Plus,
he's
Galsus
in.
has another Fire Sword, and those are always good.
Oh yeah, they're always good.
Fire,
That
fire,
fire
yeah.
magic is amazing, really. Like,
Also,
Well,
oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, what were you gonna say?
I was gonna sidetrack us on more notes about Galsus, but go ahead.
oh, no, I mean, I just thought that was worth mentioning. Like, that's another thing that shows up that the game's telling you, yeah, you need to run away from him, but if you're feeling a little ballsy, you can take him on. It's not easy. It's
oh,
not
it's
easy.
not easy.
but-
And like,
even with
you can only imagine like the sense of achievement you have doing that, right? Because like I don't know. I think one of the Galsus is at this point in the game is an excellent like instance of Thracia telling you how to feel about something, what the story is, without rating it in the narrative. Because you've seen Galsus before at this point. He shows up in chapter 5. He is terrifying, and then he kind of shows up here as Raedric's last-ditch reinforcement to say, go get those guys. He shows up, the music informs you exactly what you're about to get into. Like, you look at his stats and you say, oh, he's just as bad as he was a moment ago. It's like, you already know exactly what's going on and exactly how to play the game without the game telling you, hey, watch out for him. He could destroy everybody that you got. It doesn't need to say that. It just kind of...
You just know that.
For it. Exactly.
it's an example of show don't tell, basically.
Wait.
I wasn't sure what. Whatever. We're just a bit confused now. But yeah, great chapter. That's all I have to say. I think we covered it up pretty well, I believe. Anyways, what's next?
And if you ever doubt that this chapter was very good, just remember they basically lifted the map for the very next game.
Oh yeah, it's basically chapter 7 of Binding Blade is basically boneless chapter 6 of Thracia.
Basically.
Yeah.
So, with that, moving on.
I mean, chapter 7 of Binding Blade does have an arena, so that's pretty cool. Anyways. So, what... Oh, I think it's about my turn now. Yeah, I talk about more. I talk about more chapters left, but hey, that's okay. So, next chapter I want to talk about is actually the very last chapter of the game, chapter 25, Undying Hopes. One interesting thing I want to point out before we actually start talking about it is that this chapter probably heavily inspired with the final chapter of Fire Emblem 7.
It did.
Sword.
It did.
It's basically the same concept. You have a few very powerful units locked into like door cells and you must kill all of them before getting access to the final boss room. But in F7's case, you gotta fight them first, but that's not the point. But yeah, it's basically the same concept. You basically have your army with the best equipment you can get, with the best stats you can have. They're basically at their best of their abilities, And with the army of badasses you have, you must take the most powerful enemies you can fight as well. So I think just to see that, like that that ultimate challenge that you must face before finally getting to the final boss, I think that's an awesome concept. I really wish that Fire Emblem will do that more often actually, because I think it makes probably one of the early final chapters, if you ask me. But yeah, just like it's just a really cool concept altogether, because those enemies have like crazy skills, they have crazy stats, they have crazy equipment, they basically have crazy everything. It's daunting, it's interesting, really, and yeah. And one thing I don't really like about this chapter is that you must use door keys in order to access um those characters, but well, you can always get door keys from the chapter 22 and like maybe use a lockpick, but the problem is you can get fucked in this chapter, and I don't necessarily like that, but besides that, it's fine. So yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, I for a long time have had mixed feelings on the idea that you can get this far and be unable to progress, but I feel like it's thematically fitting still. Because like the whole game, you're supposed to feel this oppressive, dark tone, and here you can get to the end of the game, the climax of the story. Basically the guy that caused all of these problems for you is right there.
And he's pretty weak too, but you don't need to
Yeah,
do that.
but like there's still a chance that you won't be able to take him down. Like I think it speaks to just how impossible of these odds are that not just Leaf as a character, but you as a player have overcome.
Yeah, I see your point. Like it really adds to.
And to be fair, it was also possible to get to the end of the first Fire Emblem, or close to the end, and not be able to win. It was possible to get close to the end of FE3 and not be able to win. That actually happened to me one time I played FE3.
Oh my god!
It's a very Kaga thing to do. Here's a question for you: Did any of us in any playthrough of Thracia get stopped by this? Did anybody get locked out of fighting Belt? I didn't. Guy didn't.
I did not either.
Well, I mean, I only played it once, so obviously I didn't
And
happen to me.
I was going to mention that because sure, it's possible, so people might kind of say that's bad design just for the fact it's possible. But here's the thing. I said this last time, I'll say it again. If you have somehow gotten this far and you don't have something to deal with it, you don't have any door keys, you don't have any lockpicks, you don't have any unlock staves, you are this far in and you somehow still haven't learned how to manage your resources right, you don't deserve to win.
Yeah, you said that to the start. I think it's still really true today, and yeah, I agree. One thing to also mention on the final chapter is that I too was actually out of door keys by the time this final map came. I think I had literally like maybe one door key or maybe even zero, but I still did have Pan deployed because, well, Pan is a badass and he's amazing and all that because, man, 5PCC, what else do I need to say? But that's beside the points. I had Pan deployed, and most importantly, I also deployed Tina even though she was unpromoted and did not add any point of fighting. So what I did is basically just like unlock some doors with Leaf because I had a door key, unlock another door with Pan, and then I just decided to use like Tina's remaining unlock staves charges so that I could unlock the rest of the doors one by one. Yes, it was really dangerous because most of the units had reliable 1-2 range that be really dreadful. But my point is, even if you don't have any door keys, you still have some way of getting out of this mess. So really, again, it really shows what Thracia does very well. With Thracia, well, you gotta be creative with some of these solutions you do. With Thracia, you really gotta think out of the box if your main strategy doesn't work. It really encourages you to make backup plans, and I think just this situation really proves that, well, it was just well made, really. So yeah, that's a bit of my story with the chapter. So yeah.
I've always been impressed with this final chapter because a lot of final chapters in Fire Emblem will just, it'll be just, they'll just throw the final boss at you, and then they kind of expect you to take forever to beat the final boss, which most final bosses are pretty easy to beat. Here, the focus is less on killing the final boss himself and getting to the point where you can beat him. I always like the fact that it's about beating the Dreadlords, it's about beating these overpowered undead, and these people come back to life, and then also once you've done that, you've gone out of the frying pan and into the fire. Now all these berserkers are coming at you, and you still gotta move.
One of those berserkers managed to crit Fergus with a 5% hit rate, and he died.
Thracia, man, Thracia.
Yeah, I know, right? Like I was so sad. I did not reset because, well, it's the final chapter, but I felt so bad because, man, poor Fergus, just poor him. But yeah, those berserkers are really strong. Even when when Seti was old Seti, they still have a decent hit rate. So you really gotta watch out for them, big time.
Like, even though Veld is still a weak final boss, he's not really the point of the chapter. I kind of wish more Fire Emblem games would do that, where the focus is less about beating the final boss and it's more about treating it like the rest of their levels.
I think it's more like this final struggle to finally defeat the cause of all that caused you so much trouble since the beginning of the game. And when you do reach the cause of this struggle, well, you can just have a satisfying one round of Bird in this case, and I think it's a really good feeling. It makes you feel nice to finally kill this bitch, and, well, do it so easily. I think it gives you an extra satisfaction to make Bird not that hard, if you know what I mean.
Right.
I think it also echoes a little bit of what the game's trying to say about, who the antagonist is that Leaf is really fighting, right? Because the most obvious antagonist that he's fought this whole time is Raedric, but he is dealt with several chapters before the end. Veld is kind of manipulating from the shadows, but the fight with him is pretty anticlimactic. I think the important part, as we've said, of the last chapter is those other 6 dead lords. I think it's trying to say that, the real difficulty, the real danger, the real, frightening thing about this shadow of the Loptiric sect isn't so much the people that participate in it, it's the fact that it's what it engenders, it's what the belief engenders. It's what kind of grows out these mystical, ghostly presences. To me, they seem to be. It's an image that matches really well with my conception of just the problem with the Loptiric Empire is that it's still persistent after so many years. People still believe in this stuff. It's not the individual believers that are the problem. It's this creeping sense of this awful thing that just keeps coming back and back and back, and how do you kill a belief system? Anyway, that's the feeling I got. It's not so much about Veld, it's about all the stuff that comes with his entourage.
Sorry, I was gonna say, it's basically more about the cult phenomenon that still goes on despite it being absolutely crazy. Yeah, pretty much. So yeah, I think that's about it. I think this final chapter is great, despite it being possible to fail, but then again, Guy did bring a good point that you can like that it's if you someone manage to not be ready for this final chapter, then you kind of sort of doesn't fail despite that. So yeah, good chapter, good chapter, good game. It's really all I have to say. So yeah, we are now done with discontinued chapters of the game. So now we're ready to move into the third part of this podcast, the story and characters.
Okay, I've got a question for y'all. So let's start, I guess, kind of in the chronology of Fire Emblem, right? This comes right after Holy War, which is huge and epic, and maps are the size of whole countries. And generations of people. Thracia is none of that. It's much more personal. It's much more focused on Leaf and his friends. So to kind of let's talk a little bit about what that difference was like for you. Like, does it succeed in this move from the huge to the small, and how did that make you feel to notice that change?
Well, why doesn't Guy go first?
Guy? Hello?
Guy.
Wait, is he gone or something?
No, I'm here. Hi.
Hello?
Hi.
You're kind of
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I hear
Yeah.
you. We're
Yep,
just
Peter.
fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I saw your little comment, so
Yeah,
Go
I was gonna say something, but I thought Ollie couldn't hear me. Okay. Well, my bad. That's okay. Moving on. So, Thracia and its thematic differences to Holy War. Yes, I 100% think it succeeds in telling this smaller, more personal tale. I think it's firstly talking about the chronology of Fire Emblem. It's an excellent change of pace from pretty much every other game in the series, where they all span entire continents. You go through a whole number of different countries, all these different environments, see all kinds of people. Here, you're in technically just one country, although it's a split in half, so take that as you will. One or two, either way. There's no ice maps here, there's no deserts here.
Thank God there's no deserts. Oh my God. One more point, I am very glad that Thracia did not add a single lizard map because fuck that shit. Fuck lizard maps. Oh my God. Anyways, go on.
So the thing here. Well, I totally lost my train of thought. Thanks, Ollie.
Oh man.
So okay, so the point isn't to send you on this big, grand scale adventure, romping through a whole continent, toppling nation after nation in the name of whatever it is you want to project onto the character. This is about Leaf, his family, his country, his life, and the people close to him and around him, and how they are affected by far-reaching actions and people that were in Holy War that don't do little or anything here. Like Trevant, for example. A lot of people criticize this game for not having him as the final boss, or not having him play much of a role in general. But that's the thing. He's not really the big thing here. Like, yeah, he, spoiler alert, killed Leaf's parents.
Well,
But
I think everyone watching this knows that this
Yeah.
shit happens. I think we're
But
safe
that,
here.
but what I'm getting at here is the point is not to talk about the things that happened in the past, in the first generation of Holy War, during the time skip. The point here is this is Leaf's life. This is the lot he's been dealt. It doesn't matter how he got here. It matters that he is here and how he's going to get out of it. That's my interpretation of it. And that's my interpretation of why some of the characters from Holy War, like Trevant, were left out. Well, aren't faced. I mean, Trevant shows up in cutscenes, but
Yeah, he does a few times. Like, for example, in Open Fire, is pretty much shows up for the last 2 turns, for example.
Yeah,
So it's like Leif was completely absent, but he's just not really.
he's not as big of a player in this story as I think most people who played Holy War go into it thinking he will be.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
That's my reading of it. What do you guys think?
as far as the personal story goes, I've noticed that for a lot of Fire Emblem games, one game, if there is a pairing, will involve the big, grand scale continental battle, and then the other game will be more personal and more focused. You've got Binding Blade; it's all through the continent of Albion. You go through every blade. It's just moving around different locations, but it's not as epic a story. Path of Radiance is the personal story, and then Radiant Dawn is the continent-wide battle. So it seems to me like this was the perfect follow-up to Holy War, because trying to be more big and grand probably would not have worked. It does give you a more personalized feel to Yggdrasil. Instead of feeling like some big epic place, it's like, oh, people here are here. And the big giants of of Holy War, they seem even more mythic and legendary, and these are the grunts. These are the common everyday people who are fighting now. I think it works, and especially as a follow-up to Holy War.
What about you, John?
That's really true. I actually like I like that contrast that Guy particularly drew between, Holy that we've all really drawn so far, between Holy War as a statement of myth and history, and Thracia as a statement of this is what actual people's lives are like. Like when I first picked up Thracia, I didn't realize that was the difference I was feeling, but that was definitely the difference I was feeling. You know what I mean? It's like I feel that when I played Holy War, I was tempted to read the lives of the second generation as just another gesture in history, because that's how Holy War is set up. But when you read Thracia, like, all of that is out of the way, and we're seeing this as Leif. The reason why Trabant isn't so much a part of everything is because Leif doesn't have a great sense of, him playing a direct role in his life. Trabant killed Leif's parents, but, that was when Leif was an infant. He doesn't remember that much. All his life has been being on the run in northern Thracia from town to town. Like, he only knows Altena as this staunch Thracian commander rather than who she actually is. So I think it's very much an effort to get you to see things from Leif's perspective, which is what the game is all about, is trying to find the role of your idealism or your realism in your own life, in a particular person's perspective.
To go along with that, I think probably the biggest way that the two games set themselves apart, in your words, Holy War being more like historical tale, mythic, and Thracia being like these are real people's lives. Look at the very opening scrolls of the two games. Holy War starts with this detailed chronology with dates and events that happened in each of them leading up to where the game starts. So like in this year, the Grand River got settled, and this year the Loptier Empire started for the first time, and this year the Crusaders appeared, etc., etc., etc. In Thracia, it opens up like Prince Quan and Princess Ethlyn died far from their homeland. Leif has lived his life on the run here. This is what happened. This is where we are right now. It doesn't go into super elaborate detail, and it doesn't mention like this whole list of countries or groups of people. It gives you specific names.
Oh, that's a good point. I never thought about it like that.
Yeah, I think that's a good point actually. Like, I think Thracia's overall story is not really about the lore or the world around you. It's more about like Leif's journey. Really, it's more about how Leif what Leaf goes through. I really don't have much to add on that. I think it's really. I think you all three of you summed it up really well. It's much more, it's not much about the world or the lore of Jogdwell. It's really more about what your Leaf and his little army goes through. It's more about the. I was gonna say the everyday struggle, but I don't think that really fits here. But whatever.
Well, I mean, and you know, even with just the two games' titles, it kind of sets up this difference. I mean, Genealogy of the Holy War, that just sounds like this big epic story.
It's
massive. It is. I mean, it. And then Thracia's title is literally just its setting: the country of Thracia, the year 776.
Yeah, what I had no idea what Thracia was. I just thought it was a really random title that made no sense. Like, if I was just naming a video game, like I read a word and a random number, and that was gonna be the game's title. Like, but yeah, now I know that it's not that. But I was thought it was a bit silly. Now it makes much more sense. Yeah.
I think
yeah.
Look at the comment. AutoCAD brought up a good point. So basically Thracia is Rogue One and Rebels. Yep, pretty much.
Basically.
And then Holy War, I guess, is what? A New Hope or The Empire Strikes Back.
Or all three of those movies together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much the whole trilogy while we're at it. Yeah.
So Grant, while we're on the subject of story, I've got a question specifically for you, because you have kind of an experience coming into these games that we didn't. You had said in our first podcast that you played Thracia, and I think the Holy War, when you got to it, you did as well. You played them both in Japanese first, before you ever played in English. So you kind of have, we're talking about, you know, this synthesis between Holy War and Thracia. You kind of have a unique perspective on that. How did you feel the story changed? I guess I'm kind of asking you to compare your experiences, you know, based on how you felt moving from Japanese to English in Holy War. How did you feel moving from Japanese to English in Thracia? What was particularly notable about that?
So I could tell there were certain plot events going on. For example, for Holy War, I could tell that Sigurd and his army had been killed. You don't really need specific dialogue. You still have the music. The music for when Sigurd and Diodora meet for the last time, it's pretty heartbreaking, and it tells you everything you need to know without using words. But I think for me, the real significance is the dialogue and what these people are actually saying. I had to go online and look at the actual transcripts. I had to look at what people are translating and go, oh, this is what so-and-so is saying. And that leads up to this. Okay, because I had to skip the dialogue, because the dialogue is something you can't really do. Japanese and English, when their written forms are just completely different, like day and night. So there's no what the heck they were saying. But I was kind of able, through little glimpses through translate menus, to go, okay, this is what this person is saying, and this is how this scene connects. And then with Thracia, it was like that too, because I could tell that Abel had been turned to stone, but I didn't know all the details. I remember seeing Merida, and I was like, huh? Well, this is weird. Why is she here? What's going on? So now that I knew that she was being possessed, it's like, oh, this makes all the sense. And I think it also...
You were like, where is she? It's like a bitch all of a sudden.
Yeah. Yeah, what was I going to say? So there were some other scenes like that too. Some of the more really personal and intimate scenes that suddenly became they actually hit their mark for both Holy War and Thracia. Scenes that you couldn't get through. I couldn't get through gameplay, I guess.
That makes sense. And there's a lot of Thracia that a lot of important game instruction happens based on the context of what they say to each other. So I can imagine there are some important cues that you might have missed if you were only had the Japanese text.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely, because as we've all said before, this game gets a lot of crap for not telling you what to do, but the dialogue does. But kind of doesn't help you if you don't understand the language that the dialogue is in.
Yeah.
True story. One more question about... Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I just lost my train of thoughts.
Okay,
John.
fair enough. So, one more question about Holy War before we move forward. How does Thracia add to your reading of Holy War? Now that we've all played them both. How do you see Holy War differently now that you've played through Thracia?
My first response to that is I see Julius as more of a human.
Oh, yeah.
A lot more of a human, because
one thing that I really like about Thracia's Julius is that he's not like, I am evil, I am gonna disorder your blah blah blah. He's not like that all the time in Thracia, because for example, in the ending of chapter 4, you can tell he's still a bad guy, obviously, but he does spend some time with Ishtar. He does have some feelings towards her, I feel. And, well, he still chooses her, so...
Ollie, there's no some feelings about it. They're explicitly stated to be lovers. In both games.
Well, I mean, to be fair, Joyce is kind of twisted, so I'm still not too convinced about that, because he's possessed by love, cheer, and whatnot. But what my point was that, well, Julius is still showing... For example, like, Ishtar is still being worried about the challenges and whatnot that are happening at the time. But, like, Julius is, well, I'm not sure if this is going anywhere. But, like, he still says, like, he still wanted to show some going flowers to Ishtar to kind of please her, but, like, we know that it's mostly for, so that Ishtar doesn't question anymore the challenges that are going on, but still, like, showing some flowers. It's nice. It's cute.
Well, where I was going with that was there are two cutscenes with Julius and Ishtar talking to each other. There's one at the end of Chapter 4 and one at the end of Chapter 21X. One in Chapter 4 has them kind of in a meeting room in the prison, sort of. And, like, Ishtar is being asked, like, about how she and her family feel about the child hunts, and she says she's opposed, and then Julius says, like, hey, let's ditch this meeting, let's go look at the flower garden. Which, from playing Holy War and only seeing him as this literal spawn of Satan, it's really kind of confusing at first, to be honest. It's like, he actually has nice things to say to somebody. That's kind of weird. And then the scene that really gets me with him, that really changed how I read him, was the one in 21X, where they're at the now abandoned, now freed up detention center, surveying the damage that Leaf just caused. And Julius in particular says, I forget his exact phrasing, but he says something along the lines of, let's go to Miletos, let's go to these fancy parties, I'll buy you a nice dress, I'll buy you a tiara, I'll make you all pretty. And he expresses jealousy, not hate, not anger, but jealousy for Reinhardt. If you recall, Reinhardt is Ishtar's personal retainer and has been basically since they were both very young, and he is implied to have romantic feelings for her. So the thing I draw from that is that Julius realizes this and gets jealous and tells her to ditch him so that he won't lose her, because he's afraid Reinhardt will take her away from him. And I've mulled this over in my head, and I don't really see any political motivation behind it, because if Julius really wanted to, if Ishtar left him, he could just crush all of Frege under his boot and be done with it.
Yeah.
So that
about
doesn't matter.
politics, really.
So that really helped me go from seeing Julius as just, oh, he's the big bad possessed by the dragon dude, we have that in every game ever, to
Yeah.
an actual human with emotions. Even though, he is possessed, he's not who he really was supposed to be. He still has some of his humanity. So that was the most standout thing to me that changed how I read parts of Holy War.
Good.
I think this really added my love and appreciation to Leaf as a character. You get the sense that he's on the run in the Empire from Holy War, but here, this really shows you just what kind of crap he's had to deal with. Like, holy moly. Thracia is mostly a broke army of, like, thieves, bandits, militiamen. It's not like an organized army like the other games are. And I think that shows you just what kind of crap Leaf is in. There's also other little tidbits here and there that add to my appreciation. For example, the fact that Sarah is Manfroy's granddaughter. I remember, like, my Thracia stream, my good friend Daniel Robert Payne's like, what? Manfroy, that thing had a kid, and it just broke his mind. It's like, holy crap. There's Sias's existence as well. The fact that he's Alvis's bastard, and it's like, oh wow, that minor character that you talked to before the execution of Barhara. Oh, okay then.
I'm really glad you brought up Sias, because his existence really changes how I see things too. But keep going.
There's also other little things too, like Galzus and the idea that, and it kind of gives you a different perspective on the Izak, because on the Izak campaign, they're the country that Granbell first fights and just runs it on the ground. So it's all these little pieces put together, I think, that are really nice and help to add to my reading of Holy War.
It's interesting that there are so many, like, political things on the map of Yggdrasil that you figure out in Thracia that didn't play any role in Holy War at all. Like you were saying, it's kind of a similar thing about, the existence of Sias, where it's like, oh, that happened? That was a thing? Okay.
Yeah, he's literally never mentioned in Holy War.
Right.
Ever.
Yeah, exactly. And nor is the fact that there's this apparently, like, dichotomy between the leadership of Revo, where Galzus is the rightful inheritor, and what actually happened in Isaac. We just see the only thing we know about Revo and Fire Emblem, or in Holy War, is that's where Danon of Dozel is stationed, right? And it's like, and it's little things like that. Like Fergus may have a connection to royalty somewhere. There are all these like things you only knew as city names before, maybe not even that suddenly turn out to be significant somehow to people, to actual living people on the ground in Thracia, which kind of ties back to how it was different than Holy War. What I find enhances my understanding of Holy War about Thracia is that Thracia kind of picks out the limits of the narrative that Holy War has. Like, it tells this epic, sweeping story of history over multiple generations. It has this huge arc to it. And Thracia is telling you, remember, there is so much under that arc that you don't even see from that narrative. There's so much more to the story. There are people's actual lives who are affected in so many different ways. Like, for example, the child hunts. Like, that's a plot point in Holy War. That's what makes the Loptir faith so bad, is they abduct kids and sacrifice them. But you don't see, like, that's conceptually evil in Holy War, but you don't see it actually have like meaning for the people on the ground until you get to Thracia, and like the army is joined by fathers of children whose parents who are taken up by the Loptiric people. Like, it's only in Thracia that you see the actual human impact of the huge major plot points that are outlined in Holy War, which just goes to make me feel like when I go back and read Holy War a second time, I guess what I'm thinking is, remember, There's so much more at the smaller level that's going on that makes all of these forces so important to everyone. It adds dimension. That's what I would say.
For sure.
Yeah, I pretty much don't have much to go on that part. However, one thing that I really wanted to bring out, and one thing I don't think many people are paying attention to, is something that Manfred and Berto mentioned in the final chapter of the game. Before the final chapter started, they mentioned that a very important plot point about Traven, that Traven did not actually kill Coronetland because of political reason, for him to have a better advantage for basically for him to have a better country. But those two mentioned that Traven killed those two because they told him to do it. Like, I don't know if you people remember that, but like, I don't know, I think it's a plot point we should address. What do you think about it? Hello?
Sorry, I was responding to the chat. What did you say?
I've been thinking about. He was talking about how Thracia kind of makes it so that it seemed like Trabant was manipulating the killing Quan and Ethelyn.
Kind of. I mean, I don't really agree with that because Trabant's not too terribly explored as a person in Thracia, and in Holy War he was said that him and Quan hated each other. They could never agree on anything. They refused to listen to each other. So Trabant took it upon himself to see what they both wanted through, even if they couldn't agree on how to go about it. And then the Empire swooped in and took the newly conquered northern Thracia right from under his nose.
What about you, Greg?
I kind of don't like that idea. I don't like the idea that, Traven got manipulated doing what he doing. My headcanon is just Traven did it because he wanted to conquer the Master District. He wanted all the fertile ground of the northern.
Yeah, exactly. And they covered that much in FE5. So I don't agree that he was manipulated. I don't think there's anything that really suggests that.
So no, Traven, I want him to keep his agency. He's responsible. None of this manipulation stuff.
What you're saying is that he could have. I think one way you could look at it is that he was told to do it, but did it not because he was told to, but still because it will give you an advantage for Thracia's politics, basically. So.
Who are you suggesting told him to do it, though? I'm confused here.
Well, I mean, they did mention it in the final chapter, so someone.
Velden Manfroy, basically.
Yeah.
So... Oh well, I guess Manfroy would be. I mean, Manfroy is kind of the one pulling the strings behind everything ultimately in both games. So.
Like I said, headcanon, man. Traven's responsible, and nobody manipulated him into doing anything. He ain't getting off the hook.
Well, yeah, I mean, there is also the point that the Kingdom of Thracia is the only country that retains its independence from Granville when Granville becomes the Empire.
Oh yeah,
it's just the Kingdom of Thracia, the Free City of Tara, and then Granville is everything else. Right. Verdane is Granville now. Augustria is Granville now. Celeste is Granville now. Isaac is Granville now.
Everything is Granville.
You're Granville now. You're Granville now. Everyone's Granville now.
But you don't get no French fries.
Okay. Okay then.
I was thinking of HomestarRunner.net. It's .com.
I
you get
don't
French.
get it, but whatever.
Oh my.
Okay, so now for our next question. What is the plot point of Thracia that most spoke to you, and why?
Why don't you go first, John?
You say, why don't I go first?
Yeah.
Oh, I was hoping you wouldn't say that because I'm still thinking about which one to pick out.
Damn it!
I like what comes to mind. I've already sort of given the preview of this in our last one. So what comes to mind immediately, Thracia has some really killer act breaks. And of course the biggest one in most of these is the middle climax of the game where Leif takes back Leinster. But I think the more I think about it, I've discussed how that's like how it's his first victory, how everything before this was just a trajectory of try something, lose real hard, try something even bigger, lose real harder, and that's what Leif does. And in fact, when he wins at Leinster, he turns around and suffers a horrible loss in the immediately following chapter. So I think like there's a pattern that's set up by all of that. The plot point that sticks out to me is not that first victory of his, because it's immediately reversed, is not any of those kind of bumpy road of losses that he establishes. It's when he first just like opens up about how that plot has made him feel. When he I think it's chapter 23 maybe, when he meets Seti the second time, not in prison in Manster, when Seti
it's 23.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. When it's chapter 23 then. So, not the first time after Seti has helped break them out of Manster and helped get them out of a really sticky situation, but later on, when he meets up almost entirely by chance with Seti, when they're trying to go back into Manster and finish the task that they started several seasons ago. And there's this really incredible conversation that happens between the two of them, where they just they hit the gate, and Leif and Seti meet up, and Leif's instant reaction is, "Oh, Seti is here. Thank God, the true hero has arrived. I can finally put this down and leave this to the pros." And Seti's like, "Dude, you're a hero to everyone. You realize that?" And Leif is like, "How could that possibly be? Look at everything I've done. I have lost and lost and lost again. I can't win without, turning right around and getting my dearest friends killed. I am nothing but a failure. I lose everything. How am I a hero?" And Seti says, "Look, it's not the record of whether you win or lose that makes you a hero. It's your dedication to a task, it's your dedication to your ideals, and it's your persistence at following that the entire time." And that conversation, more than any of the ups and downs of political maneuvering and warfare and victories and losses, mostly losses, that Leif studies, it's that moment right there that really stands out to me for Leif's character and for the entire game, because that, I think, that to me is the soul of the Thracian plot, which is that in this eternal struggle between, do you follow your ideals or do you follow what practicality really says is going to work? Leif every single time chooses his ideals, and that gets him destroyed. But by the end of it, that's what makes him a wholer person. And that's why that's why that stands out to me, because it's the clearest articulation of that theme. It's just moving to me. They wrote it really well. That's what I would say.
I like that. I like that a lot.
Me too.
Good choice.
Plus 300 points to John Barkmeyer. He wins.
Thanks. I'll take the 300 points. I'll turn it over to you. What are your guys' favorite moments?
I'm still trying to pick one, to be honest, because so much of the game just stands out to me.
I guess I'll go next. I guess if I absolutely had to pick, it's one of the losses. It's right around the time of chapter 19. This is when Leaf loses a major fight. A lot of people like Leaf because he actually loses, and some criticisms of other Fire Emblem lords are that they're just too strong. I think it does help to set Leaf apart and show that he does actually fail and that he does make mistakes. And I think it also helps to set the Thracia plot a little bit more, is that you really do feel like Leaf is fighting greater odds. And I do think the Grand Bell Empire, at least when you look at the stakes that are present and the threat level between the good guys and the bad guys, it really does help to sell that this is more like what an actual empire is supposed to be like. Because, evil empires are kind of a dime a dozen in fantasy, but only a relative number of them actually come across as threatening. And I think it's moments like this where it's like, oh crap, I'm actually losing. I just went up again. I made a big mistake, and now I'm paying a price for it. So that really spoke out to me, and I think that does help to sell Thracia 776's plot. It's like, oh, our hero just lost. Crap! We have to go on the run.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I agree. What about you, Guy? Have you picked one yet?
Ooh. The most immediate one to me is probably where things really, quote unquote, start. I'm talking about chapter 5, where Avel gets turned into a statue. Merida is under the possession of the Shadow Sword, as they would call it nowadays. And where Veld and Raedric really sell themselves as being the bad guys, the scummy, power-hungry dudes that we always have to fight in every game ever. But the thing that sets these two guys apart is Raedric shows himself here to actually kind of be a coward. Because when when Leaf opens the door for Avel to get out, Raedric freaks out. He's like, somebody do something, somebody stop them, I gotta get out of here. And Veld's just like, calm down, I got it, it's fine.
Yeah, Raedric, despite being the Empire, is not much of an emperor to begin with, just for how he acts. I think this part is really proven when he dies in chapter 24, how he still relies on Birdo to save his life, even though he's dying. He says like, help me, Birdo, I do not want to die, I do not want to. And then he dies. I think he always relied on him till the very end. It really shows that he wasn't really ever. He didn't even ever had the true power of the land. I feel like. Anyways, I'm getting sidetracked. Go on.
So this is where Leaf's main motivation comes into play. He wants to get his foster mother back. He has to stop Raedric because Raedric is terrorizing all these people. He has to stop Veld because Veld's in charge of all the Lapterians in this area. So this is the point where his enemies really present themselves. He has his personal objective, and for now he has to run away, and that is really hard for him to do. I mean, he just straight up has to leave her behind. He can't do anything about it. He can't get to where she is. So he has to run for now and survive and get stronger. And that's pretty much the whole rest of the journey for him. So there's so many other moments I really would love to talk about, but I think that's the most standout one.
Hey, Guy, question for you. In that moment, I'm
Yes.
tempted to. I mean, I've probably made it clear by now. I'm tempted to read the entirety of Thracia as this ongoing conflict between the decision your ideals want to make and the decisions practicality forces you to. Is that the first concession that Leaf makes to practicality?
I mean, yes. I think it's the first time where he's really pushing his emotions to the side and realizing this is just what has to be done. Because, I mean, there's literally nothing he can do. He doesn't even know that the Kia staff exists yet until he gets outside and August tells him about it. Even if he knew about it, he doesn't know anybody who can use it. And even if he did know someone who could use it, there's no way for him at this time to get to where Avel is. So he really just kind of has to say, well, I'm sorry, basically, Mom, I'll come back for you. I don't have a choice. And I mean, you can hear it in the next chapter, in chapter 6, where August shows up prepared to rescue Leaf, and Leaf's already gotten out. And Leaf says, like, he's never been more angry. He just wants to charge in there and strangle them with his own bare hands. And I'm like, whoa.
He's
like
pissed off, yeah.
Like, that's considering that Leaf up to this point has been relatively relaxed for a guy in his position, because I mean, this living on the run is basically all he's ever known. To really seeing this emotional outburst from him is kind of shocking, because throughout everything that we've seen, he's maintained his composure and been courageous, been stand up saying, hey, I'm tired of running, let me fight. And now he's accepting he has no choice but to run, and it makes him really angry. So it's like he's realizing he can't just throw himself at every problem in the world and expect to come out on top. That's actually kind of like Ephraim now that I think about it. Interesting.
That is neat. That's an interesting parallel you draw. But I think, yeah, I think you're right. I think this is a moment where, against everything he would rather do, he decides that there is something he has to do, which is go on the run. I would think, at least in my reading of the story, I haven't played through it once, it looks to me like that's what motivates Leaf throughout the rest of his quest to double down even more on his ideals when he can, just because, like, he has had to face reality once.
Mm-hmm.
He hated every part of it, and so I think that sets him even more squarely on the path of what he believes is right and just and the proper thing to do for the rest of his adventure.
And this is also kind of the point that I use to talk about this game and relate it to people who are familiar with Path of Radiance, because to me, the starts of these two games are very similar. And I see it as Ike kind of goes through the same thing that Leaf does, that they both lose their parental figure, and then that is what serves as their main motivation to stick to their ideals, but also to go on their journey, to basically have the game happen. If you want more parallels, of course. That's the parallel I like to draw personally.
I think there are a ton of good parallels to draw in Fire Emblem. That's a good one, yeah.
So are we ready to move on to the next question?
Sure. So it seems to me like we're already kind of... It's always difficult to separate characterization and story. It seems that we're moving from the more overarching points in our story to questions about the people who live in Yggdrasil. So let's go there. And before we get into specifics, we're each going to talk about the characters that we find most interesting and most exciting in Thracia. I think a good first question would be kind of in line with the question I had asked about the relationship between Holy War and Thracia, right? So we're all clear by this point. There are very few spoken lines in Thracia. There's not much dialogue. It's pretty minimal when there is some. How do you feel that impacts characterization? Does it hurt? Does it help? Or do you care one way or another? Is it just different?
I think it helps characterization, to be honest with you, because Thracia doesn't take the time to go into things it doesn't need to. Like, some of the more modern games, obviously they have the support conversations where characters will go off on tangents and talk about this, that, or the other thing. Like, we'll have supports in later games about, like, oh, well, this is my favorite food, I'm really bad at cooking, or I'm just straight up better than you. Thracia doesn't have time for that. It tells you what you need to know. But its characters aren't lacking for personality and motivation. Like, I think a good example of this is probably Olwen. Like, she shows up a little bit more than most of the other characters, but she, we don't know her favorite food. We don't know her birthday. That's not necessary, but we do know what her motivation is, who her main inspiration is, who her family is, who her best friend is, who her rival is, and we know what her ideals are. We know what she's fighting for and why she changes sides. Look at Sarah. Sarah speaks exactly 3 times in the entire game, but we know who her grandfather is. We know her personality, like that she's really quiet and shy and doesn't do well with people. We know why she doesn't get along with her grandfather, and we know that she has this strange attraction to Leaf, which is not really specific as to what it is. I chalk it up as to, oh, he's a cute dude, but it's not clear at all. But so Sarah's probably the best example because, again, she speaks 3 times the whole game, but we know pretty much everything about her that's pertinent. The game doesn't waste our time telling us things we don't need to know about her.
So what about you, Grant?
I actually feel like it hurts the game because there are lots of characters I just do not remember, like Alva and Klein, the Christmas Cavalier duo in this game. I don't remember them. They're very interchangeable. They're not only the worst Christmas knights for unit-wise in the series, but I couldn't tell you a single thing about their personalities.
If I may interject onto that, Grant, the reason for that is intentional. Kaga said in an interview that he left Kine, Alva, and Robert as blank slates for the player to imagine how they would react to these situations.
See, I don't like that idea of the blank slate that I'm the one who has to project on these characters. I feel it's like very lazy writing. I feel like it's better to actually give the character their own defined personality. Now, there are some characters in Thracia that do have personalities. I mean, like Leaf or Finn or like even Sias. But I feel like this, if we do get echoes of Thracia 776 the way Gaiden did, I want there to be support conversations. And I do feel like it would help the game immensely to have more dialogue, help the cast be more memorable.
As for me, I also feel like it actually hurts the game. Well, not much, but it actually does hurt a bit. But that may be because I am usually not really the type of guy that how can I say? Not really the type of person that can easily read things between the lines. I prefer to have well lots of detail, lots of things that are easily explained to me so that I can understand it easily. But so to have things that are sometimes kind of vague, kind of how can I say, kind of not obvious to me, I feel like it's harder for me to understand. But like that's how can I say this? Like I feel like because of that, because I usually have a hard time analyzing narrative stuff in general. I feel like the lack of dialogue in my case hurt the characters a bit because I don't feel like I know them that much. I know what their base traits are, but I feel like I wanted to know more. I want to relate to them more than them just being a few things here and there. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say. And also, one thing to add about the kind of Alvin Robert, basically the three derelict dudes, is that, well, yeah, they don't have any dialogue, but at least they do have an ending where you can guess a little of their base personality. At least there's that. It's not much, but it's there. So yeah, that's my point of view on things. So, what about you, John?
Well, I'm going to bring us to a dead heat tie. I think in this instance, it helps the game. This is what I'm thinking. I think in general, the question of, whether to characterize people deeply with a bunch of dialogue or narrative, or whether to just be minimalist about it and have them say only a handful of things and tell the rest through gameplay, I guess. I think that's just an artistic decision that which of those choices is right, or whether either of those choices is right, depends on what the game is and what the story you're telling, yada, yada, yada. I think in this particular instance, it helps the game only because of who the designer is. Having played, I guess, 4 out of the 5 games designed by Mr. Kaga in the series, he's done plenty of other work outside of Fire Emblem. I have never found him to be a very good person at writing scripts. I don't think he is a great writer of dialogue. I think he writes plots very well. Holy War is an excellent example of that. It's very intricately plotted. But as for the individual characters, I've never found them to be written deeply, particularly well. I think the more narrative stuff that comes out of them, like the more he attempts to characterize them through longer dialogue, the clearer it becomes that there are just facets of character personality that, for one reason or another, he just never particularly cares to put in there. Which is why I think Thracia is a very good decision for him, because what I see him doing in Thracia is maybe or maybe not looking at Holy War and seeing how that played to his strengths or not. But I think what he's doing in Thracia is very consciously matching his talents as a writer, which is to say, focus on the plot. Pick out those moments that are of extreme importance for the few characters he is really invested in telling a story about, and invest a little bit more dialogue in those instances to make it clear why it's so important to them. But what it really does is make you focus on what Kaga is interested in, rather than forcing him to explain and write more script and write more characters, which has never been something he particularly cares about, I think. That's my take on it. So I think it's the right choice for him in this instance. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I agree with that sentiment. Because like I was getting at, like I said, he doesn't waste time, so to speak. He doesn't give more than he feels like he needs to here. And the trend continues into his other works. Just to briefly touch on your point about him personally before we move on, Tearing Saga is very, very plot heavy. Very. Like, some plot explanations and lore details drag on for a little too long in that game, if you ask me. And the game itself is longer than any Fire Emblem. It's 40-something chapters. And
Yikes.
I'm not familiar with Berwick Saga, so I can't speak for Berwick. But then Vestaria Saga, the one that he made just last year, kind of follows the same vein as Thracia. The characters don't really say too much. They just kind of give you what you need to know about them, and not much else. Some of them also have personal weapons that aren't regalia, but that's another point. We'll talk about that game eventually. But anyway, so you're right on your analysis of Kaga as a person, and him playing to his strengths with this game is what I'm getting at.
So that's 2 votes for and 2 votes against. I think we're going to have to leave this one in a tie. Anybody have anything else to say about minimalism in writing before we move on?
No.
I don't think I have much to say.
Sounds good. Okay. Well, the next place we're going is to kind of dive a little bit more into character. I know, after I've said bad things about writing character, this game really does write some neat characters, so let's talk about them. We each wanted to take our favorite character from the game and just explain at a little bit more length what makes them so great to us. And I think, unsurprisingly, we all really like the first choice. Grant, take it away. Who are we talking about first?
Leif, the main character of Thracia 776.
Hey!
And one of me and Guy's favorite male Fire Emblem characters. He appeared on both of our lists back when we did that podcast.
Yep.
So the main thing about Leif is that he does feel like he's the biggest underdog out of all the lords in the series. His preferring weapon isn't as powerful as the other regalia that the other lords get. He feels like he has the least amount of resources, and unlike other lords, it feels like his royalty status screws him over more than it actually helps. But at the same time, it can make his victories seem all the more rewarding. Thracia gives you a huge sense of accomplishment and satisfaction because, well, you have to go through so many huge obstacles to get there. And that's kind of Leif's story in general, is that his obstacles are so immense, but when he does overcome them, there's this great feeling of satisfaction, like his journey is, it was one worth taking. And again, I think another really cool thing is that he's trying to live his father's dream, going back to what Ronaldo said about Holy War, about the children inheriting the sins of their parents, the sins of the past, and trying to make it work, is uniting Manster and Thracia together in one country. I think that's a very important point, and I think the fact that Leif carries that so well works.
So, John, what about you?
I love Leif. He's a great character. We've kind of covered the tack that this game is taking towards storytelling before, but he's just so understandable why he does everything. He's a young kid. He starts out the game trying to be exactly the anime hero that you think he is at first glance. He's like, young adolescent boy off to save the world, off to right the problems that are wrong in his area of the world, and he marches straight up to the gates of Manster, ready to score an unlikely but huge victory. And then he totally blows it. Like, nothing goes as planned. He's wrecked and shattered, and he has to run. And that's, I've said that's the pattern that he keeps up with as he goes on. What I think sets Leif apart from many other characters, either in Thracia or elsewhere, is how much we get to see that take a toll on him. Like, he is clearly of importance to other people. There are many people from his past that run across him that say, oh my goodness, Lord Leif is still alive, that gives me new hope. And it's just extremely telling to me that Leif's reaction to each of those circumstances, to the extent he even has one, is just kind of like, well, thanks, but why do I deserve it? Like, it's kind of like you see him very clearly not having a sense of why he deserves some importance to everyone else, even though he does, even though it's his being able to stick to that dream he has for his country and for the rest of his life. It is that makes him such an effective leader. But I think what really gets to me about Leif is that I don't know if he ever sees like why he deserves that love and attention, why it's him that's leading the army instead of Seti in the end, like I was discussing. Like, I think what gets me about Leif is that he's so informed by his character is so informed by the circumstances he's had to live through, and he makes such a conscious choice to follow his ideals even when he's not really so sure about his ability to do it himself. I think that's what I respect most about him. He's a really cool lord.
What about you, Guy?
I mean, it's no secret, Leif is my favorite of the main characters in this series by far. Only one other one even comes close. And Leif is just So well handled, well done. I love that. Well, I'm a sucker first off for the opening where it's kind of like I'm tired of running. I'm gonna let me stand up, let me fight, let me make my own decisions. But see, Leaf, the difference between him and some other main characters is he doesn't use his position of authority as a prince to make people let him do what he wants and make them listen to him. He asks. He demands it as an individual person, not a figure of authority. Because he doesn't see himself as a figure of authority. He ran from his kingdom when he was an infant because it was getting sieged and burned down. He's never seen the throne he's supposed to inherit. So his status as a prince, for all intents and purposes, really means nothing to him. It's a non-factor. And that's what really speaks to me, is because a lot of times people say, oh, I wish we had a really relatable character that's not a lord. I wish we had someone like Ike. I like Ike. I wish we had someone else like that. And to me, not to jab at Ike, because I do like him too, but to me, Leaf is kind of what people are asking for already. Because, yeah, he has a title that means literally nothing. And it doesn't matter to him or anyone else. The reason that Leaf is in charge is not because he's the prince, it's because he is the one, he's charismatic, and he's the one with the vision. He's the one with the dream. He's the one that wants to reunite the two kingdoms like his father wanted to before him and failed to do.
This is very true.
So the fact that he's the Prince of Leonster is just kind of a means to that end that he ends up happening to have later on, but it's not what drives him. It's not, his goal is not, oh, I got to reclaim my throne and be powerful and be this awesome ruler. He just wants his homeland back because of the people that live there and the people that his parents that he never really even got to know presided over and cared so much for. And that, like, his most trusted advisor and retainer, Finn, knew. Like, Finn was friends with those people and saw them die when he was running out of the castle with baby Leaf in his arms. So that ties in Leaf's motivation and character. What I'm driving at here, it ties into the game's theme overall of it's very personal and it's about the people, not the places.
And if I can just add to that point, Guy, I think you're absolutely right that Leaf's title may be Lord, but he never sees himself as a Lord. But I think there's a large number of people in the cast who join the army because Leaf is, their prince. Like, you have the whole Finn. Yeah, exactly. Finn, Selfina, Glade, that whole cadre of people who are like, Lord Leaf is still alive. I am pledged to Leinster, therefore, this is the army where I belong. I think that's how it starts for them, but I think for each of them, the narrative is they join because of their loyalty to the prince, but they remain and they become so attached to the cause because they come to appreciate just exactly what a good person Leaf is, because just as you were saying, like it's where his heart is at. He's not in it just to win power back for the sake of a title. He's in it because he has seen the people of his country firsthand, as in all of his travels after he's escaped, and he's really doing everything he can for them. I think they see that, and that they come for the title. They stay because Leaf is such a good person.
Specifically to bring up that point, since we mentioned Selfina, when Leaf meets her, he specifically says he's thought of her as a sister. Like, the obvious conclusion to draw from that is the sister that he never knew he had, that he never got to know. Because she's relatively young, too. And so, like you say, she joins because he's the prince. She's from Leonster. She has to. It's her job. but she stays because of this personal attachment to Leaf and seeing him as a person that she knows and cares about personally and has known for years grow and develop.
Yeah.
For sure.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I also think Leaf is great. I don't. Again, I don't think I have too much to add, but I really like how much determination Leaf has through the game. Because as we mentioned before, Leaf fails a lot through the entirety of the game, and yet he still keeps getting back up despite his many failures. I like how despite the overwhelming odds, I really like his determination. He's kind of a hard worker in a way. I appreciate that he's like, despite the overwhelming odds against him, he just keeps going because he believes in his cause so hard. And I think I appreciate that a lot. So yeah, cool dude. I think I have not nothing much to add. So yeah. Sorry, we already move on. No,
What were you gonna say? Sorry.
I was just gonna move on to the next character.
Oh, well, before we do that, just because I love little tidbits like this, all of this talk about how all the horrible things Leaf has seen and survived, have any of you considered where his name comes from?
Guy, I love it when you do this. Do explain.
So, the name itself is a Scandinavian name, which translated literally means heir or descendant, but the Japanese pronunciation, well, the pronunciation generally of the name Leaf is closer to a figure from Norse mythology, which is spelled Lif, L-I-F, pronounced Leaf, who was one of the two survivors of Ragnarok, which was the cataclysm in Norse mythology. So I'll let you guys draw your parallels there.
It also says on Fire Emblem Wiki that his name could also be a reference to Lu, a deity from Irish mythology who was the son of Quan and Ethlin.
Yes, which is probably where they got his parents' names from.
Yeah, I've always noticed that that the Yggdrasil series takes a lot of Irish and Norse references.
It does, and I love every bit of it. With some Greek stuff thrown in, obviously the Kingdom of Thracia itself, that was a real place.
Miletos, if I'm not mistaken, also has sort of a reference, that area.
Yes, and Augustria sort of does too, like with Ares, but that's a tangent. I just wanted to bring up that little tidbit. We can move on now.
Yep, Miletos is named after an ancient Greek city. Okay.
Alright, so I guess my turn now. So the next character we have in the top of discussion is my boy Finn. Yes. So yeah, I think it's no secret that Finn is one of the most liked characters in, at least in all of JoJo, if not the whole franchise, for those who has played the JoJo games, yeah. And yeah, for good reason. I think Finn is just first off, we can all agree that Finn, just the way that Finn basically gave his whole life away, just so that Leaf could grow up in a safe, relatively friendly environment. Just so, the guy literally, he literally gave some of his food to Leaf, just so that Leaf could survive, just so that Leaf could stay alive and have his hunger satisfied. He really, I think, gave all of his life, even to an extent some of his emotions too, just so that Leaf could grow happy and grow to be eventually a good leader for Thracia as a whole, really. And you can really see that from just his emotion with Quan, just kind of carried through when Leaf came to be, really. And Like just the way that he pretty much gave his life away, just so that in the country he loved, the country for love could grow to be, well, not to be a bad Trump joke. I'm gonna make a bad Trump joke, and just to see that Thracia could be great again will be just, it's, yeah, bad joke. Yeah, so just like Thracia could be great again, I think that's just really, that's some incredible devotion from it. It's fantastic, and yeah, I really like the guy. Just, and he's pretty. Just the way he acts, I think he's really. I gotta can't really rely on that. I gotta count on a person that you can really like. Just, just really the aura that he gives to other people. Just like the aura that it just feels right when you speak to him, when you talk to him. It just clicks. Just I don't know. I think I spent enough time. I think he's just all around great, Finn. So yeah, I think you guys are better at this. So I'll let you go. I'll let you talk about him a bit more. So Grant, Finn, what do you think?
He's one of my There's a reason why he's one of my favorite male Fire Emblem characters. Finn is best daddy.
Yeah, best daddy. I know.
I think what really stands out to me is his sacrifice that you touched upon, the idea that, and his loyalty too, because it's like this guy's master Quan just died. If Finn really wanted to, he could have just given up Leaf. Like he could have betrayed Leinster the way Raederick did, and he could have just saved his own hide. But instead, he chose the harder path. He chose to run. He chose to. He chose to really stick himself out there for Leaf, even going so much as to sacrifice food for Leaf's behalf. And while it eventually paid off, there were a lot of years, I imagine, where babysitting must have been just a nightmare. Because he's trying not only is he trying to get himself not killed, but he's also looking after 2 little kids. That's got to be tough. That is some hardcore. That is some hardcore loyalty you probably don't see as much of nowadays. It's just the idea that even if his master has died, he is still going to do his duty, and he is still going to protect those freaking kids. So yeah, I really admire and appreciate that. He took the harder path. He made the harder choice, but he did the right thing.
For sure. I think so. I'm a fan of Finn as well. I think we've covered really well why he's just a wonderful father figure and a real role model in that respect. I'm going to take what's interesting to me about Finn is that there's a totally different side of his character, and that's that you see all this. You hear kind of secondhand about all of this parenting that he did, all of this responsibility that he just voluntarily took on. and like all of that comes out in the story about the past, but in neither game he's in, neither Holy War nor Thracia, ever shows any of that really playably on screen. That's all happening off camera. That's all happening in the backstory. What you do see of Finn is, in Thracia particularly, this kind of other side to him, where even though he is the greatest father figure you could ever ask for from all the story that happens, his conversation with Selphina says he was a pretty lousy lover and husband. He never went looking for Lachesis, and like Selphina doesn't have a great opinion of him. Glade and Finn have kind of a friendship, but it's just there's a total disconnect between the Finn who raised Leaf and Nana and the Finn who has to carry on relationships with other people, which I think just adds a really interesting amount of dimension to him. Like, he's not all that great of a friend, but he's an excellent father. And that's just that I've always found that a neat little piece about Finn, which I think makes him much more interesting in my view.
Well, yeah, the thing about that point that he doesn't go looking for Lachesis, he does at the end of the game, but he meets with Selphina, he hasn't yet, so you're kind of right there. But yeah, I like that you brought that up, because Finn and Lachesis' relationship isn't delved into too terribly much, but we do know, or at least it's strongly implied, that he wasn't the only man she was with.
Yeah.
It is very strongly implied that Delmud, or Diarmuid, however you pronounce his new fancy Irish name, is Beowulf's son. And even further is the implication that Fergus might somehow have a connection to Beowulf too. Fergus, of all people. But so I think that does some interesting things for both characters, but for the purpose of this, we'll talk more about Finn. It's, like you said, John, he's really, really not that great with people his own age, his own demographic, I guess, is the right word, maybe. And he's also really kind of he's the only one of the of Leonster's infamous knight brigade, the Lanzenritter, that we actually meet, like, ever. So he is kind of set apart from everyone else in that sense. And he's also, obviously, Quan's most trusted retainer and advisor. So even as a teenager, he was like 14 or so when he first showed up in Holy War, he was already showing himself as a good advisor figure and a good... I don't really like the word servant, but that's kind of what he was for a while there. But not really good with anyone out, like, in a more personal capacity.
And even your point about you're absolutely right. He does go looking for Lachesis at the end of Holy War, which is, you know, good on him, but he still needs to be told. Like, when he first meets Selphina, she says, "Where is your wife, Finn? Did you talk to her, Finn?" And he's like, well, I didn't. Get off me. And it's just like, he's a great father, but it comes with kind of a weird rest of his personality. I don't know. Cool guy, though. Neat character.
I think we can all agree on that, really.
I mean, Finn also is obviously stand out for being the only character to be in all 3 stories in Yggdrasil.
Yeah, that too. He's the only one who is playable in both generations. Since he's also playable in Thracia, well, you're right.
Yep. So
he is consistently okay as a unit.
Yeah, I think he's good in Gen 1. Great Jake and Gen 2 in borderline necessary in Thracia's only game, and still really good late game, solely because of his awesome Brave Lance. But we're not discussing units, I believe. But
yeah,
well, right.
But, you know, another thing about Finn is his loyalty. This might be me reading a little bit too into things, but you could make a case for his loyalty being, like, kind of to a fault, because if you recall in Holy War, when Chapter 4 started, when Quan and Ethlem went back to Leonster to go get reinforcements to help out Sigurd, Finn went with them, even though his talents on the battlefield would probably have been better utilized with Sigurd. He didn't stick with Sigurd because he's not loyal to Sigurd, he's loyal to Quan.
yeah, that's right. He shows much more to Quan than Sigurd.
That
obviously
includes leaving behind whoever he fell in love with if you made him fall in love. This is where the canon in Thracia versus the options in Holy War get a little bit murky, but assuming canon, this is also where he's like, okay, love you, see you later, bye, to whoever his wife is.
Right.
Well, it turned out to be the right choice in the end, because if he had stuck with Sigurd, he would have got barbecued.
Yes. So
You know, it just occurred to me. Finn is like Camus, except he fights for the blue side.
You know, in a way, you're kind of right.
He just turns down all personal feelings and relationships in service of his country. That is what he does. And this is the kind of character it looks like. It's interesting this happens in the last of the Kaga games because he has built up this string of games before and after Thracia where, you look at this Camus figure and your one thought about that kind of character is, oh man, if only they joined my side. If only we could make them see the light of fighting for us, they'd be just brilliant. And it turns out Finn is that character. And he's a real weirdo, but he's helpful. He helped some people live through some awful things, but he has some real problems of his own getting along with people. Anyway.
To go off of that, unlike other Camuses, Finn actually gets rewarded for his loyalty and for his devotion rather than getting screwed over by it. I think that's one characteristic that almost all Camus archetypes go through, is the idea that their loyalty just becomes their undoing, whereas with Finn, it's like, oh, my loyalty paid off.
I'm sorry, I just look at the chat and laugh, please.
You just called her Camus. That's funny.
Good job. Oh my god.
Wow! Well,
and
I have without words.
Chloe's gonna get screwed.
Oh boy.
So let's move off of that one. Let's see. I think Guy is going to talk about our next character.
Sure.
Camus.
No. He's like Camus, but he's bad guy. And he uses a lance just like Camus, but he's not Camus. No, okay. No, actually, it's not a he, and they don't use a lance. I'm going to talk about Merida, because she is awesome and beautiful in so many ways, and I love her so much.
His edgy mistress.
Well, you know, I am naturally drawn to those kind of characters, first off. I mean... Just a sec.
Okay, that's odd.
Okay, maybe while Guy's taking care of
Okay, I'm
this
good.
thing,
Sorry.
Oh, no problem. Go
I'm
ahead.
good. Just something real quick.
Go for it.
I was being too loud, so I'm gonna calm down a little bit. But so what I was saying is, yes, I'm naturally drawn to these kind of characters, the dark-haired, kind of no-nonsense swords people, usually the women. But beyond that, Merida is interesting because she's so... The first standout thing for her is she's kind of like Leaf's adoptive sister. Because Avel actually adopted her and takes care of her. Merida specifically calls her mom. And obviously Avel helped raise Leaf. And Merida uses this admiration and gratitude for her mother, the only mother she's ever known, really, might as well be her mother, as a motivator, as a way, as kind of a life lesson to get stronger, to be a better fighter, to help people, protect people. And we see her, or we're introduced to her, she's been captured as a way to get to Leaf, and she has been given this horrible cursed shadow sword that's making her attack her own beloved mother. And when we're introduced to her later on properly and she joins her side, she's understandably angry about this, and she immediately wants to go meet up with Leaf, help him out. And we don't really hear too much from her in the story for a while after that, until chapter 24, where we properly fight Galzus on as equal footing as you can possibly get with a guy like that. And she has surmised correctly that he is her biological father. But the thing that sets this apart is most kids would probably be like angry at first. Like that would be the instinct. Like, why weren't you there for me? Why did you abandon me? Where have you been? What have you been doing? What could possibly be more important than me? And Marita doesn't say any of that. She consoles him because he has spent his life since she went missing regretting everything and just serving as a mercenary to scrape by. And she says, it's okay, it wasn't your fault. I should have listened to you when I was a child. And just instantly, Galsus's entire look on the world changes. He loses some of that stoicism because suddenly he has the one family he had in this world back. And I lost my train of thought for a second.
Damn it.
Yeah. So he kind of sheds his shell a little bit because the one family he's had in this world is back, and not only is she back, she isn't mad at him or resentful in the slightest. So the only stipulation that is made at the end of the game when Avella is back is, hey, you, Galsus, should probably come visit every once in a while. So I kind of like how that resolves itself. And that's something I think the series doesn't really touch on very often, and when it has in other cases, I don't think it's done it too well, is this theme of parenthood and like the relationships between parents and children. Like, obviously, Holy War had a marriage and children mechanic, but the point of the game was that the children never got to know their parents. Then we had Awakening, which made it a point of its children doing kind of the same thing Marita does, is going back and understanding why their parents did what they did, and if they were resentful, like Severa was, losing that resentment, or if they weren't, coming to understand exactly what happened. And then Fates, which did nothing interesting at all with its children. So that's a little bit of a tangent, but Marita is special to me for that reason, is the primary reason. Is that she presents an idea and resolves it that the series is not very commonly tackled. And when it has, it hasn't tackled it well, in my opinion. Usually.
Yeah, pretty
That's
much
really
all
good
of that,
insight.
really.
Yeah, and I think that's what stands out to me about Marita's story is that kind of ability to make things good with what she's been, with what things have been in the past. Like, I really like that aspect of her character. It reminds me a lot of Holy War, actually. It's that the new generation being able to make up for stuff in the past. It takes place with Marita kind of, I see it's kind of a pay it forward situation. It happens to her and then she does it to someone else. You explained how she does it to Galsus. What I think that situation comes from is after she, we first see her brainwashed assaulting her mom, and after that happens, she's really shook up about it. But what we when on this in the scene of the chapter where she joins the army, what you see her doing is, unless I read this scene totally wrong, what has happened in the meantime is, I think it's Sias has purified like what
It's
was
Sias,
the dark
yeah.
side into Marita's sword, and he gives it back to her, and she's like, "What are you doing? I can't take this thing." And she says, "It's not about the sword, it's about who you are. Pay it forward." And so she takes the sword, and with it eventually is able to, right some wrongs in the country. She takes the sword all the way to Galsus, and she says, "Look, I forgive you." It's kind of like it comes from a place of having done her parents wrong, and she kind of has this personal atonement that she does learns that, it's not about the tools that you have, it's about how you use them, and goes forward and says, look, my tool is forgiveness in this case. Let's have the family that remains to me. I really like that aspect of her.
Mm-hmm. And that's another interesting thing, is that with her sword specifically, she is taking this evil thing that was used against her and her mother and Leaf and turning it right back at the enemy now that she's in control of herself again. So that's another interesting thing, is that she's taking the enemy's power that they gave her and using it against them. I also find it kind of cool that she, to kind of go back to what I was saying with Leaf, where he's a noble, but it means nothing for him, and he doesn't really care about it. Marita's kind of the same way. She is technically a crusader. She has Major Odo blood, but she never comes in contact with the Balmung, ever. And she never personally brings it up. It's only people talking about her indirectly, mentioning it. Like, she doesn't really care. It doesn't matter. I think that's a recurring theme in this game in general, is that these things that in other games, these traits that are so integral to characters and who they are, here these people have special traits that would set them apart, and they just don't care because they are who they want to be.
So what about you, John?
Is it time to move on to my favorite character? It's plural. There are two favorite characters. So, if we're good moving off, any other points to make on Marita before we move on?
Nope, I'm good.
Awesome.
I don't
Okay.
have much myself. I think she's great. Like, yeah.
Agreed.
One of the best ones at Thracia, actually. Actually, one point I do want to bring is that one thing I like is that, well, her design may seem to be like your typical, like, edgy myrmidon with, like, she has the short black hair, like, even in Porto kind of screams like she's gonna be, like your typical edgy girl without much of emotions going on with her, but when you do actually meet her, she's actually kind of cheerful, kind of like when, for example, when Leaf requests of her to accompany him on this journey to basically reunite Thracia, she says so in a cheerful manner, right? Just to break that that edge archetype where that contrasts with her design. I really appreciate that personally. So I don't know. I kind of like that. That's all I have to say. Moving on. Moving on.
Cool. All right. So I couldn't limit myself to just one. I can't have just one. I picked two for my favorite characters. And I think the reason I picked two is not because I can't limit myself, but rather because I think you can only see them together as part of a whole. So my faves are August and Dorius. And the reason I think they travel together so brilliantly is because I think they best reflect really the central question in the whole theme of the game, at least as I see it. You've heard me explain that about a dozen times so far. So since the first Fire Emblem, there's always been a sort of stand-in character for the player. There's a tactician, there's a strategist, there is one person who is up there whose job is to kind of lead, the army and devise what they do. And that's been the case ever since Maladus and the very first of them. Thracia, interestingly, has two of those figures. Not one, but two. And they are polar opposites. So the first one is this, like, king of realpolitik. He's like a total pragmatist. He has this weird, shady past. Every time there's a question of what to do, he always sides with the dirtier but probably more successful of the two options. In fact, I really like how nobody ever really knows whether August tortured people. There's this rumor in the very first scene that it's like, oh, you were kicked out of the clergy for, like, torturing people, and that just kind of slides and is never addressed again. You don't really know about it. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. Maybe that's just what the thieves say about him, but maybe it was real. So he's not a pleasant person. He's very helpful in his counsel, but dealing with him feels just a little icky. And on the other hand, you have the other of the tactician figures, who is everything about nobility. He is the embodiment of old school military tactics, honor. He's a wounded veteran. He has no arm. In fact, I kind of wish it were like clearer in the story that Dorius has lost his arm. I think it would
they
be.
do mention it a few times actually. So.
Oh,
Well,
for
yeah,
sure,
but like the graphical limitations don't really showcase it.
Exactly. I think
Ah, yeah.
it would be. I think it would be very telling if there were a visual reminder. And I know this is beyond the graphical capabilities or whatever. I just think it's helpful from a storyline perspective to remember that when he's arguing with August about what to do, there is this very visual evidence that August cannot miss, that the man in front of him has great courage and has sacrificed so much in battle for everything he's talking about. Like, there is some real experience behind everything Dorius is saying, even though August disagrees as to, what can help them win. And so you combine them and they're at each other's throats this whole time, right? So Leaf, every single chapter Leaf wants to do something and they're just at each other's. They're entirely getting on each other's goat the whole time. They always disagree about everything. There's even a large part of the game where you have to pick which of them to side with to determine where you go. So even though there's this civil disagreement, it's this echo of the central theme that I think is the case throughout the entire game, which is when there is a disagreement between your ideals and what practicality makes you do, which one do you side with? And I think it's indicative of the central Fire Emblem theme as well, that the idealist is the one who dies, but he's also the one who dies to save his companions, which is entirely Leaf's story, just all over again. That's what I'll say about them. They stand out to me so much because I think they echo that central question in the entirety of Thracia 776, which is, how do you reconcile your belief in your ideals against how the world actually works?
Mm-hmm. Good rundown. These two have always stood out to me as probably the best sort of NPC tactician advisor sort of people. For the reasons you broke down, and I love how they bounce off of each other. Honestly, when I first played the game, I was expecting that at some point August would betray us because they said...
I did too, yes!
Yeah, because they said, like, he maybe had done some shady things, and he just kind of showed up out of nowhere and was like, oh, hey, you're Prince Leaf, I'm here to help you. Like, that sounded really, really sketchy. So
right, and he's working for the bandits, yeah.
Yeah, I kept waiting for like a moment like in Holy War where where Arvis betrayed Sigurd. I was waiting for something like this, like, oh god, what's going to happen? But it never came to pass.
Which it's just yet more indication of who August is, right? Like something feels really off when Leaf has to rely on him for all this time, but it turns out he guides him totally well. So that's Leaf and practicality in a nutshell. It makes you do things you don't really feel so good about, but in the end, it's also necessary. So there's that.
And I have to say that Dorius's death hit me harder than I thought it would when it actually happened the first time around. I remember I was just sitting there staring at the screen with my mouth wide open. I was just like, did that actually happen? Oh my god, Dorius is dead. He's just gone. And a detail that I think a lot of people probably miss, I think I briefly mentioned it last time, but just to be safe, Leaf's leadership stars are tied to the 2 tacticians. He starts the game with 0, he quickly gains 1 when August joins, he gains another when Dorius joins, and he loses 1 when Dorius dies. So Dorius and August have that marginal effect on the gameplay. Their presence slightly makes everyone in your army more accurate and more dodgy.
Yeah, I think that's a
neat.
really brilliant tie between the story and the gameplay. That's the reason why there's probably one of the strongest arguments against
it is, and it's amazing to me that it's just such a simple little thing that, and like most players will never even notice it, but when you do notice it, it does so much for the reading of the game, at least for me. And
Absolutely.
so that right there is one of the things that I love this game so much for.
Guy, to your point, what really broke my heart was the end of chapter 18, when you can tell, Guy gets the news
Mhm.
from Guy gets the news from Alster, and he's like, "Oh well, we have to go fight it because that's what Leaf does." He hears something that sparks his ideals, and he's like, "Okay, time to do something about it." And Dorius, after saying to you, "Is that really what you want to do? Are you really gonna try to do that?" Like, Leaf's made up his mind, so Dorius knows exactly what is coming to him, and he plans for how chapter 19 is going to go. And it's just, you can tell he's saying his last goodbyes at the end of that. It's heartbreaking.
And just imagine how hard that has to be for him, like knowing that he's marching to his death, but he's doing it because of Leaf's request. Leaf basically begging him to do it.
Yeah,
Interestingly,
Go ahead.
Interestingly enough, the wiki points out that that the failed assault on Alster was kind of Dorius and August kind of coming together, making a reconciliation in spite of all their previous disagreements. It's kind of cool when you think about it. It's like, oh, we know this isn't going to work, but this is what Leaf wants. We're going to respect it, and we're going to respect each other, and we're probably going to get screwed by this, but, here's mutual respect.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really cool how they tie that together.
And I think that's like the perfect embodiment of exactly the thematic thing that Thracia is getting at, right? The ultimate fate of the guy who stands for ideals and order and honor, all that idealism side of the coin. What does he do? He ends up dying. But he ends up dying in a way that brings everyone together, that has a purpose, in a way that unifies the army, in a way that wasn't the case before he did that. What does the guy who stands for realism do? Well, he survives the whole game, but at the end of it, he's kind of forgotten, and he's still a little bit of a shady character. We have some mixed feelings about him. So, one of them gets the job done, one of them loses his life, but is able to, put together something really bigger than himself. And that's I think, once again, that's that central concept of Thracia, which is that both idealism and realism have a place, and it's the tricky act of finding that balance that runs through the whole thing.
Another reading into this that I really like is what this does for Leaf as a person, because he is so concerned with the people, and we've touched on that, but he is so concerned with the people of Ulster that he totally forgets to consider Dorius as a person and the people in his own army. He is so excited to have this home he never knew finally back that he just wants to go free another land. Why not? Let's do it. And half his army just gets decimated. So that's one of the things that I love about Leaf so much, is he makes mistakes, and boy does he pay the price for them. And do other people too, because Dorius lost his life. They said about half the army did too. And then Leaf and the survivors are stuck under siege for 6 months straight until Seliph comes and frees them. So that whole sequence from like the end of chapter 18 to the end of chapter 20 really, really just hit so hard for me.
After the failed attempt on Alster, there was this little bit of dialogue where Leaf got all torn up emotionally about the loss, and then August is like, wait, don't let Dorius' sacrifice go in vain. We have to live on to fight another day, but remember his sacrifice and remember the things he did for you. That was also a nice little reconciliatory moment, I felt.
I like that for August too, because like John said, like you just said, they spent this whole game basically bickering about what the best course of action is, and then right there at the end, oh man, that's part of the game just hits me so hard.
All right, guys. Do you have any other points on August and Dorius before we move along?
Well, I think that I think most of you already said, but the way Dorius speaks to Leaf at the end of chapter 18 was quite well done, really. Just the way that it's not outright said, obviously, but you can feel that Dorius knows that he's gonna die. He knows that this is the last time he will ever speak to Leaf, and you can just feel the tension between, well, Dorius and Leaf. You can feel that things are not really right, and it just makes the scene that much more impactful when Dorius does get defeated in combat. And I just, like, it really just hit me so hard when, well, Dorius died, when this happened. It's just really well done. Chapter 18's ending is just quite perfect that way. I really like it. So yeah.
For sure.
I really like both of them for different reasons, and besides, Dorius has a really cool mustache, so that's always nice. But yeah.
Hey,
I think
August can grow a neat beard too.
Oh yeah, that's true. He does. I prefer mustaches, but that's another point. But yeah, I really like both of them. I think they're both quite good. I feel like also their personality kind of clash. I feel like August is the more reserved guy, while Dorius is probably the more energetic in a way. The more outgoing. Should I say? They're like, even their core personality clash along with their ideas. I think it really adds even more to them, even more how they interact with each other, and I think that's something I really appreciate about both of them. So yeah, they're great, both of them. Again, but
They are, and it's tough to conceive of a role for either of them without the other.
Yeah, without the other, they'd be much lesser. Like, even the Ross split would work much worse if one of them were not there anymore.
All right. So in the interests of time, we've got a couple other characters that a couple of us wanted to make sure we get in. So we're going to discuss those. I'm going to say maximum 2 minutes each. And then we've got a couple of questions to close out the podcast. So first, Ollie had a word to say about Dashin.
Daishin of all people. I don't know why, but I really wanted to talk about this guy. Like, he's not deep. He's not really super interesting. He's not like extremely like. He's not really remarkable. But I don't know why. I really like this guy anyways. Like, in a way, he reminds me of Dorcas of all people. Like, he's just like a man that loves his family, loves his kids too. Just the way he speaks, just the way that he speaks in his death and escape dialogue. Just the way he talks about his kids, you can really feel that he cares about his family very much. He not just fights because he has to for his family's sake. And like, but he does have some morals too. Like, for example, when he learns about that, like, when he's recruited back in chapter 4, like, you can tell that he knows that his body wasn't perfect, but when he is like when he speaks to, well, speaks in codes, but because I don't think Levi actually talks about Daichin, but when he's recruited, he says, "That's it. I'm done with the Empire. I'm done with this bullshit. I'm gonna fight with you instead," because he knows that, well, he doesn't have any attachment to the Empire. He just goes fights for it because he has to, and well, yeah. He's just a great family man that loves his family and just is a good man all around.
I agree.
Good Overnight 2. He's actually useful for the best Great Escape chapter.
For sure, yeah. And like he's, like you said, I always like seeing depictions of good, loving, functioning families in Fire Emblem. So it's great that he's a dad. And it's also great that he's a knight, because I love knights. So in the interest of time, I also wanted to make sure Guy has a moment to get a word in about Misha. Guy?
Yes, Misha is a really slept-on character, and I really like her a lot because she clearly has a sense of honor and morality and justice, but she's kind of blind to what she's really fighting for at first, and when she's first captured, they kind of treat her like an animal. Like, oh, we should just put her out of her misery. We can't keep her in captivity. Like, what are you talking about? But, and then Leaf has a moment of character growth and strength when he's like, well, if you don't know what's going on, I'm gonna make you live so you see what's going on. And so she sticks with him. I really like her. She's kind of a simple mercenary, sort of, but she has clear morality. She has clear motives. She's fighting for the kids in Celeste, and she's doing all she knows how to do for their sake. And so I feel like people don't really give her enough attention. I really like her.
I really like her
Class-
design too. It just works really well. I think, like, you can. I can't really explain it, but I think she's so gorgeous. Like, just the way she looks.
She
like,
is.
oh my god, she's pretty. Like, yeah. I also
She
like.
is.
I just really like her units. Like, her bases may seem a little bit low in some stats, but then you realize she has excellent growth anyways, and then you realize she's still fucking Pegasus Knight, so it doesn't really matter because Pegasus Knights are just really fucking good overall.
Yeah,
And
she's
that
really
and the
great.
Sword is just a really cool weapon too.
And the wind sword is kind of seen as her thing now, which is interesting to me, that because like the fan base kind of doesn't really pay her any attention, even the people that have played this game. And then Cypher, and I'm assuming when she shows up in Heroes will do it too. It's kind of made the wind sword like her thing.
Yeah, because
I feel like that's their way of saying, like, hey, check out this character. She's really cool. She's awesome. Pay her attention.
Sword. She's
Yeah.
badass. Like, one thing I did on chapter 22 or 1, I can't remember, but I basically dismounted her on a fort, equipped the wind sword, and she pretty much sold all the enemies without much of a problem. Because of how fucking bonkers forts are in this game.
Mm-hmm.
I really love turret bonuses in Thracia. They're just so cool, really. Yeah, Misha's great. I really like her. I doesn't necessarily speak a lot, but she doesn't really need to. What do you think about it?
And before we move on real quick, true to a lot of characters in this game, she is Dietvar's daughter. Dietvar, one of the enemies from Holy War, and that, again, she kind of doesn't really pay it any mind. She does her own thing. Like, she doesn't live in her mother's shadow or anything. She does what she thinks is right, no matter what her lineage tells her she should do.
It's a classic case of Silesian discord. That's always been the nation of civil war, and it's always been the nation of royal descendants who didn't quite know where they fit in the world. Misha's a perfect inheritor to that line of thought.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, before we get out of talking about characters, I have one question more for the whole group of us. which is something that's always near and dear to me. I've always, I mean, you talk with me for 2 seconds about Fire Emblem, and you'll figure out that what I really like about Fire Emblem is how it characterizes the villains. I think villains add a really important part of thematic message to virtually every Fire Emblem there is. So, that in mind, what do you guys think of Raedric and Veld as the lead villains?
I really like them. They do their roles pretty well. Like Raedric, at first you probably think like, oh, he's just the typical power-hungry dude. We're gonna kill him eventually, blah blah blah. The thing that makes Raedric interesting, I touched on it a little bit though, is he has a cowardly side, which most of the other enemy commanders in the series don't really ever show that fear to us. They keep their act up, and Raedric doesn't. He freaks out at the slightest thing going wrong, and Veld has to calm him down about it. I also kind of like the nod that Raedric is to the first Fire Emblem, and that Raedric is the betrayer. He is the reason that Leaf's grandfather is dead, and that Leonster is in ruins. And on top of that happening in the backstory, when the game starts, he's here like, okay, good job capturing those 2 girls. I'm going to take them back to Mancer with me. We're going to bait Leaf out. So, I think Raedric is a very satisfying villain.
As for me, I really like Raedric because, well, he's like both this menacing emperor, and I think his overall design will help some of that. But then, as we mentioned earlier, he's also a bit of a coward because, as I said, he still relies on Birdo the entire game, and he doesn't really lead anything. He's just like the poster child of everything terrible that's happening to Thracia in the story. And I think, like this both sides of him, I think really makes him quite interesting. So, yeah, I really like the guy, but kind of weak as a final boss if you had a magic sword, or if you give Marito the sword, then watch your wreck his face despite the love to effect, and that's always really nice. Like seriously though, when I fight this guy with Marito's sword, it was like the most epic fight ever. Like seriously. Anyways, I really like Raedric. Veldo is alright, I guess. Does his job, is menacing enough, has a decent design. And well, he's just a typical Dark Bishop, kinda like Mainfroy. And well, I have nothing against him, but he's not a standout anytime soon. I will never call him that, at least. And well, yeah, don't have much to say about him really. So yeah, what about you, John?
I like Raedric and Veld quite a lot, and the reason is going to sound very familiar for me coming off of talking about August and Dorius. I think, once again, they're essentially the August and Dorius of the villain cast, which is why I think they're so good. They fit perfectly in the thematic message of Thracia. Raedric is the practicality side. Veld is the ideal side. Raedric just wants a promotion. Raedric's just in it to do his job really well and move up the ladder in the Grand Valian military. And Veld is in it because he's a true believer in the ideals of the Lopteric Church. Like, he is in it in order to make sure that the resurrection of his god is complete, total, and fully realized. And like that leads them, just like August and Dorius, to have these moments of conflict, of competition. The clearest moment I have of that is in the 5th chapter. We've already been talking about, what a big moment that is for Leaf, seeing Evel just kind of, turn to stone, seeing Merida. It was a big moment for Merida as she, is forced by dark magic to take up arms against her mom. But another important thing we see in that very same scene is the dynamic between Raedric and Veld, and it's not friendly at all. We have, Raedric orders this kind of arena combat sort of for his own amusement because he thinks this is going to be a grand show, and Veld's reaction to it is, so we're just wasting time. Like, what about actually going after the mission we're trying to pursue? And Raedric's like, no, this will be fun. Check it out. So like, you already have this like this clear disagreement between leadership, where Raedric is just after the practicality of getting his promotion, and Veld is really more invested in that kind of overarching purpose and thematic ideal to the story. And so I think their relationship is as emblematic of the rest of Thracia as the relationship between August and Dorius was. It shows those two sides of the coin and how they look when they're on the other side as well.
Raedric always seemed
very
to
good at... Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Raedric always seemed like Giol 2.0 from the Arcane games, but unlike Giol, it's interesting that Raedric is the focus. He's like the main villain, as opposed to being just a side villain like Giol. And to bring it back to what Autocat said, it does kind of make Thracia feel more like Rogue One in that sense, because you get the feeling that both Raedric and Veld are not the top dogs of their respective organizations. In other Fire Emblem games, whoever the villain is, they're the leader of something. In Holy War, you've got Manfroy, who's the leader of the Loptier cult. You've got Alvis, who's the Emperor, and Julius, who's the Emperor. Here, it's like, no, Raedric still serves the Empire. He's sort of like a middle manager, and you can, like Krennic was in Rogue One. And then Veld, he answers to Manfroy, so it's like, oh, we've got these characters are clearly not the top dogs. I don't find them the most memorable, but at the same time, they do differ. I can at least give them points for being different than what other Fire Emblem games do, and I can appreciate that.
It's interesting that you raised that, because for one thing, Raedric isn't just not the top dog, he's also not the second dog. Like from Holy War, we know he's not at god level like Julius. He's not at emperor level like Arvis. He's not even at regional governor level, which is Bloom. He's yet a step below that, which just like it kind of cements him into the world that Thracia is dealing with. Like it's a very Fire Emblem thing to kind of tease the fact that there are so many problems left unresolved at the end of the game. This is just a tiny piece of a bigger picture of human history, but like at the same time, it shows just what a personal level Thracia is working on. Like Raedric is the arch villain, and all he's after is just trying to move up the corporate ladder and get a solid middle class existence.
All right, so
Out of the conclusion.
Yeah, so we're
conclusion, guys.
kind of the end of what we had planned to talk about today. We've got one last question, and then if we have any time left over, we can turn it over for questions from the chat. But before we do, let's end this on a big note. Thracia 776 was released in September 1999. That's nearly 20 years ago at this point. My goodness.
Oh my gosh. I feel old.
You feel old.
I was 3 years old when this game came out.
I was
wasn't
8
even a
years
year
old.
I was
God
3, and I am now 21.
I was at least playing games at that time. So that's been a while. Here's the question. Nearly 2 decades later, what is it that draws you back? Why are we coming back to Thracia today in 2017?
Well, I think Thracia is, like to quote myself, it's I will rate Thracia a 9.776 out of 10. Because, well, Thracia pretty much has everything going for it, really. It has excellent map design, it has good characters, it has a great story, and it's pretty much the most fun game to play, except for in my case, but that doesn't matter. But like it pretty much has everything going for it. It has cool, unique mechanics and training that really work well with each other. Like mentioned, each mechanic presented to the game works together with another to create the pretty much the best Fire Emblem experience you can have, gameplay wise, and I think that's makes it so special. And like, it's just, it's a really fun game, even if you can get frustrated with it sometimes, but not enough. Like, it's even if you do have some frustrating resets here and there, it's not enough to bring the game down. It's just a fantastically well made game, one that is secretly extremely well designed, even if it has oddities here and there. And like I said, its story works even deeper into making the gameplay even more worthwhile. I think this is Kaga's masterpiece. It shows. Like, it works even better with Holy War, and I am so glad I played this. Like, Guy, just thank you very much for circle jerking this game so much. Because otherwise I would have been skeptical like everyone else, but I am so glad I played it.
Well, I'm glad I had a positive effect on you, because not everybody takes too kindly to my ample praise for this game.
Yeah.
Well, screw them.
Yeah, screw them. They're fools.
It's well placed. Don't listen to them.
But so I guess that makes it my turn. For me, what keeps me coming back almost 20 years later, this game is, simply put, I think it's the definitive Fire Emblem experience. It builds on the 4 that came before it, and it is inspired in one way or another all 10 that came after it. It is the culmination of everything that Fire Emblem was when it came out and would be afterwards. So even if one doesn't think it's the best designed Fire Emblem like I think it is, I still think that these aspects make it, like, if you want a Fire Emblem experience, that this is the one to play. This is where you need to go.
Well, to be fair, I would probably not recommend it to beginner players personally, because it is still a really hard and challenging game. Not brutal or impossible, mind you. That is a very important point.
I have unironically recommended it to people as their first Fire Emblem, because I believe it does a good job of telling you through the dialogue how it works, and letting you as the player figure out what you should be doing and figure out how you want to approach it, because almost every single map in the game can be approached so many ways. So, I mean, I understand, like, yeah, it's harder than the average Fire Emblem, and its reputation makes it seem even harder than that. But I don't personally have any qualms with saying, you know, if you want a challenging game, if you want the definitive Fire Emblem experience, this is where you should go.
Yes, like Atoka just mentioned, Spartan training. I think that's a good point. I still think it's a little bit hard for beginners, but yeah, let's just put it that way. It's a fantastic game. Great.
So, Thracia 776 has my favorite gameplay of the Fire Emblem games by far, bar none. There's a reason why I'm bringing back the capture and fatigue systems for the game I'm trying to create, because I think they're just so freaking excellent. This is a game that the more you play it, the more satisfying and rewarding it feels, because it really, honest to goodness, feels like there are 20 different ways to approach any given level, and I love that about the game.
Oh, yeah.
I love the map design.
One thing I wanted
I love the map design.
Sorry, guys. I'm sorry. Sorry if I was rude there, but one thing I love about Thracia's map design is, like, it feels like Sandbox Emblem in a way. You have, like you said, you can really do almost anything you want with the map as long as you beat it. It's really satisfying. It's great. Anyways, yeah. Go on. I was just sorry for interrupting you that way.
The unit balance is wonderful. The mechanics help to build one on top of the other. It's one of my favorite video games. Even my top three favorite Fire Emblem games are just some of my favorite video games in general. But I think the fact that Thracia still is the ideal gameplay standard, even after we've had 10 others, is really telling of its enduring quality. It's challenging, but not in a way that feels unfair, even when it has the occasional moment of BS. Anyway, yeah, so the ultimate point is that it's a dang fun game to play. And it has an amazing atmosphere, too.
Capture is amazing. Praise capture. Worship capture. Capture is wow. John, your turn. What do you have
My
to say
turn.
about Thracia 776?
I guess I get to bring us home. Well, there are two reasons why. So I've played Thracia once, but I know I'm going to come back to it, and there are two reasons for that decision. The first, as you've all gone, into a great deal of great depth on, is that it's really well designed. It is the apotheosis of Kaga's design. The series went kind of in a different direction after that, for better or for worse, but I think this really is what Kaga was trying to do from the very beginning kind of had its culmination in Thracia, and it really shows. It's a tightly balanced game, mostly, and it comes to it's just a ton of fun to play through and to engage with. So that's the first reason, but the second reason has to deal with more of why I come to games in the first place, which is the stories that they tell. I've always been of the feeling that stories in any medium are best told succinctly, which is to say, you get in, you tell what you have to tell, and then you end the story without anything extraneous. And Thracia, unlike Holy War before it, I would say, but uniquely among Fire Emblems, really just cuts out all of the fat from its storytelling and distills it into such a streamlined narrative that the points it wants to make are so clear and said with such brevity and so well that I just feel that it really shines there, just for the feeling it leaves you with. Like, you feel that you really have discovered something, even if Leaf has miles to go before the entire continent of Yggdrasil is safe, even if it's only been one subsect of the Lopteric faith that has been defeated by that point, you still feel at the end of that game like you have learned something, like Leaf has learned something, and that some great step in the entire history of Yggdrasil has been taken. And for that reason, I think I'm going to come back to it and take that step again.
I am definitely gonna play Rugby someday, even though I've heard it's the weaker one. Just because, well, more Thracia. How can I say no to that?
I've played this game close to 40 times now. If that doesn't tell you how much I love it, nothing will.
I think I've beaten this game, 4 or 5 times. This is the game I streamed, and Guy can attest to this. He saw it. Yeah.
Green Brigand.
Fun game to stream. Yeah. The Green Brigand, the underappreciated god of Fire Emblem.
Well, I played it once, but it was awesome, so I'm going to do it again.
John, I must say, I'm really looking forward to when you get to it on your blogging adventure.
I'm really looking forward to it too.
And seeing you go through the game again, knowing what you know, and putting it all down into all of the glorious written detail that you do so well. I'm so looking forward to it. I loved when you did FE1. I'm loving you do FE2. Can't wait for the rest.
Dude, I appreciate it. I will try to be glorious for your sake.
Yeah, I've been loving it. I haven't had as much of an opportunity to see your blog stuff, John, but what I have seen, oh gosh, please share your stuff. It's wonderful having another blog besides mine. We need more people like you.
Sorry, I just want to comment. It's great. Where's the Green Brigand only blood and what bonus girls doesn't give? I don't know, I found it funny.
So there what?
Anyways, go on.
There was a question in the comments. Someone asked me if I was going to add an execution option in my game. I wasn't thinking about it. I think it was capture is probably just going to be execute the way it was in Thracia, and that was about it. At least that's how I was going to do it.
So 5 minutes before we end the stream. So 5 minutes, just question, guys.
What do you think about Finn and Carrie and his combat units? I think they're both really well done. Finn is excellent for capturing, especially early on, because personal Brave Lance. Brave weapons are great. He's also mounted. So, and Carrion for combat, he is more of a growth-based unit, but he grows really well. He has his personal Paragon Blade. Well, not personal, but it's intended for him. That gives him extra experience and gives him a defensive bonus so he doesn't go down as easy while you're training him. So they're both very good units.
And when he
I
is training,
would agree.
He fucking kicks ass. He's pretty much I was almost contemplating not throwing him and just let his base stats carry base stats. His level 20 stats carry him through endgame, but like it was just that good. Like wow, what a man. What a man.
They're also both mounted guys, so there's very little. They're both mounted guys who are around at the time when the team has other options for people on foot when you need them on foot. So they both have little opportunity for you to really train their use of swords on foot. Carrion doesn't really struggle because of that, because he can use swords on horseback, and he gets a really fancy sword that used to be his dad's anyway. Finn, of course, has to be mediocre in some fashion, because every appearance of Finn has been mediocre in some fashion. So the way he really achieves it in this game is, even though he has this awesome Brave Lance, the end game is all indoors, and there's really no incentive in place for you to train his swords up until that point. So if you're planning on taking Finn into the last few castles, he's kind of behind at that point.
Yeah, he's gonna have the flaw somewhere, I guess.
All right. What characters do you feel would benefit, or would you like to see some extra history of? Well, the obvious answers would be Kane, Alva, and Robert, because they were literally blank slates in the original. If we're talking about a hypothetical remake, of course. Other than them, my personal pick would probably be Fred, because most of what we know about him is tied to his position as a Knight of Frege and his personal relationship with Olwen. So I would like to see their relationship explored a little bit more, and him as an individual explored more.
I was thinking like Fergus, maybe. Fergus, which seems like a cool kind of brash guy. Another one is maybe Asvel too. I think it'd be kind of nice to see, how he came to know Leaf and what his story was before joining up with the Magi squad.
Yeah, Asvel would be a benefit from that, I think.
Being me, my Tim. Oh, go ahead, Ollie.
I agree with Fergus having more characterization, because the few lines I saw about him were giving me a great vibe of his character, and I really wanted to see more about him, since I really like characters of his time. So I think giving him more backstory about him will be cool. Yeah.
Adakad, this is a great question. I would only add, since, I'm me and care about villains, of course my immediate answer to this was, well, I'd like to see a villain characterized more. So I'll say Sias. I'd like to see a lot more of Sias. I think we already do see a lot about him that is very interesting, particularly his personality coming from the background that he had. But I'd welcome seeing more of what made him who he is, and what made him walk such a gray area of the war that he does.
If a remake was to happen and supports were added, who would you like to see support each other? My not obvious pick would be Olwen and Amalda, because they are both from Frege. They're both generals in its army specifically, and Olwen has a lot more of an upbeat personality, a lot more of a positive outlook than Amalda does. I mean, Amalda's title is literally the Despairing Knight, so I would like to see those two bounce off of each other.
I think my choice will be between Buckwhite and Brighton. Why not? Because I think they just because they're both soldiers of the squad that wanted to liberate Leaf, and I just to see them interact with each other and see their point of view on whatever situation they're going through will be a quite nice touch. And yeah, that's probably the support I'd be picking.
I would say, I mean, my preference for functioning family relationships, so I would love to see Glade and Selphina talk to each other.
That would be great. That'd be awesome.
For sure. I would also, to finish out the triangle, I would also love to see Finn talk to both of them, Finn and Glade, for the chance to see how Finn actually carries on the one friendship he has in his life, and for Finn and Selphina just to see them come to some sort of resolution, because it's very clear Selphina does not appreciate the man that Finn is.
I would. Oh, this one's a toughie. There's I would kind of like to say something along the lines of maybe Sias and Seti. Oh no, that can't work.
They're Samson Aaron. That can't happen.
Maybe Marty and Tanya.
I would say Orson and Tanya because those two are supposed to.
Matt Orson, dang it! I said Marty. Matt Orson.
Orson and Tanya because they already have a couple of little talks in the game. They're implied very strongly to be a item. So I would like to see them develop that and see more bickering between them because it's hilarious. I would also like to see. I would like to see Leaf and Marita talk more directly because they only do it like once or twice in the main game. So I'd like to see them expand on their relationship as kind of pseudo siblings.
Yeah, they seem to be close to each other, but they barely talk between them. I think it's a bit of a shame, but.
Next question then. What do you think about people who say Leaf is the worst Lord unit-wise? I strongly disagree because he has a lot going for him that other Lords don't, and Leaf's competition, so to speak, faces problems most other games units don't. Namely, Leaf being on foot doesn't really matter much because dismounting exists, so he has an advantage indoors compared to a lot of the army. Leaf also isn't hurt by being sword locked because he has a personal 1-2 range magic sword. His average to subpar growths don't hurt much because the Crusader Scrolls are a thing. He benefits from being able to participate in every single map because he's immune to fatigue and he's the main character. So, I mean, there's no being worse than Roy as a unit, just straight up.
I played the FE6 and fuck Roy. He's so bad. Oh my god.
I can understand people like looking at their stats like at a glance thinking that, which is what I've seen people do, but actually playing the two games, I cannot honestly fathom somebody thinking Leaf is anywhere near as bad as Roy, let alone worse.
Guy, I think the only other special thing about Thracia that he left off the list was the fact that he supports everybody else as well.
Leaf supports like about half of the cast. So it just, plus with that and his leadership stars and the ability to use the King's Sword, Leaf benefits people literally just by existing. He doesn't have to see combat ever himself to benefit the rest of the army.
And that's like a special thing about Thracia, right? Like that's something that if it were legitimately a question of just, stats and growths, yeah, Leaf's pretty awful. But there's all that other stuff that's a question of the Thracian system that really, you won't get anywhere but in Thracia, which I think is why it's kind of apples and oranges to compare Leaf against other lords in the series.
Mm-hmm.
Leaf is basically a cheerleader who traded his pom-poms for a sword.
Basically.
Go Thracia!
So AutoCAD AutoCAD talked about the Fire Emblem 6 podcast. By the way, guys, it's probably going to be the next podcast I'm going to do, but it's going to be with a completely different cast of people.
Yeah, well...
Yeah, I will not be participating in that one.
Yeah, me neither. FE6
I look forward.
Not that good, in my opinion. Sorry.
I look forward to this.
I wasn't going to say that. I agree, but I wasn't going to say that. But okay.
I look forward to your podcast because I don't remember enough FE6
I don't despise FE6, but it's... So far, I am at 8X right now. It's definitely the weakest of the GBA titles so far.
Well, let's not end on a negative note.
Please. Yes.
So, I'm looking forward to listening to that. But when it comes to Thracia, I want to say thanks to everybody who's listened in on this. Thank you guys. Well, Grant for organizing this, John, Ollie for participating. I always love talking about this game to the point that people kind of hate me for talking about it.
Aw.
But
It's good.
It's-
Through them.
I just really, I'm glad I got the chance to really dig in with other people and express in spoken word, because I think I do a lot better speaking than I do typing, why this game is so special, why I love it so much, and why I think everybody should play it at least once.
And I have Guy to thank for having played it once. So thanks very much, Guy. It was a great game. I look forward to playing it again. Grant, thanks for hosting us in concept. Ollie, thank you for hosting us on our channel. This has been great. Thanks, guys.
No props. And as
Yeah,
for myself,
I've loved this. Thanks, guys.
And as for myself, I want first off, thanks John for being here. It's really nice of you. Great, thanks for organizing for podcast in the first place. It was a good time, even though I suck at storytelling. Anyways, and thanks Guy for convincing me so hard to play Thracia. Because man, Thracia, I'm so glad.
I told you you'd love it.
Yeah, you were right, and it shows. And finally, I just want to say, well, thank you for everyone who has watched this thing. It was great. It was a good time, and thanks for being active in the comments. It was nice to see your opinions, nice to see discussion, and well, it was nice to vent about how good Thracia is. So I say thank you very much, everyone, and let's hope I'll catch some of you later for another podcast. It seems like it will be on F6, and we'll see what happens there. And so, just thank you, everyone. Thank you. And with that, well, I'll say goodbye and see you next time, everyone.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
See you later.